After burying my wife, I found a note in her jewelry box. It read, "Please forgive me." Along with it was a key to a storage unit she had kept me out of for 30 years. When I finally opened that rusted storage door, what was inside nearly made me collapse. I thought I knew everything about the woman I shared a bed with for 4 decades, but I was wrong. And I thought I knew my son, but the monster he became that afternoon was a stranger to me. Before I tell you what I found in the dark, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Sylvester, but everyone calls me Sly. I am 68 years old, and for 30 years I carried mail through the rain and snow of Chicago to put food on the table. I am a simple man. I believe in hard work. I believe in loyalty, and until 3 days ago, I believed in family. But as I stood over the open grave of my wife Etta, the only thing I felt was a cold knife of betrayal twisting in my gut. Before I continue this story, please let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand alone against the people who were supposed to love you the most. The sound of dirt hitting the casket is a sound you never forget. It is a hollow, final thud that signals the end of a life. It was raining a cold, gray drizzle that soaked through my black suit, but I did not open my umbrella. I wanted to feel the cold. I wanted to feel something other than the numbness that had taken over my body since Etta died in her sleep 3 days ago. Standing next to me was my son Tyrone. He is 35 years old, and he was wearing a suit that was too tight and shoes that cost more than my first car. He did not look at the casket. He did not look at me. He was staring at his wristwatch, tapping his foot on the wet grass like he had a bus to catch. Next to him was his wife Courtney. She is a sharp-featured woman with blonde hair that is always perfectly sprayed into place even in the rain. She was holding a black umbrella, but she was not holding Tyrone's hand. She was leaning in close to his ear, and even though the pastor was reading the 23rd Psalm, her voice cut through the prayer like a bandsaw. "I cannot believe she bought the solid oak casket," Courtney whispered loud enough for the front row to hear. "What a waste of money for a hole in the ground. That is $5,000 that could have gone to us." I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth ached. Etta had saved for her funeral for 10 years. She wanted the oak because she loved the old oak tree in our backyard. It was her dignity she was paying for. But to Courtney, it was just money subtracted from an inheritance she felt entitled to. Tyrone did not shush her. He did not tell her to show some respect for the woman who raised him. He just nodded and pulled his phone out of his pocket. I watched him out of the corner of my eye. He was not looking at old photos of his mother, he was texting. I saw the screen flash. It was a message to a contact named real estate agent. My heart broke right there in the cemetery. My wife was not even covered with earth yet, and my son was already calculating the square footage of the home I was still living in. I felt a tear run down my cheek, but it wasn't just grief anymore. It was rage. A slow burning rage that warmed me against the cold rain. When the service ended, people came by to shake my hand. Neighbors I had known for 40 years, men I played dominoes with. They looked at me with pity. Poor old Sly, they were thinking. All alone in that big house. But Tyrone and Courtney did not come to shake my hand. They walked straight to their leased Mercedes without a backward glance. I drove my old Ford pickup truck home alone. The house was too quiet. For 40 years, this house had been filled with the smell of Etta-S cooking and the sound of her humming jazz tunes while she dusted. Now it smelled of old paper and silence. I walked into our bedroom. I needed to feel close to her. I sat on the edge of the bed and ran my hand over her pillow. It still smelled like lavender and cocoa butter. On the dresser sat her old jewelry box. It was a simple wooden box I had made for her on our 5th anniversary. I opened it expecting to see her Sunday pearls and her clip-on earrings. But the velvet lining was empty except for a small folded piece of paper and a heavy brass key. My hands trembled as I unfolded the note. Etta-S handwriting was shaky, like she had written it in a hurry or in pain. "Sly, please forgive me. I hid this from you for our safety. Do not trust Tyrone. Go to Unit 4B at the Northside Storage. Love, Etta." I stared at the note. Forgive her for what? And why Northside? The North Side was the bad part of town. It was a place of abandoned factories and desperate people. Etta was a church-going woman who terrified of jaywalking. She had always told me never to go to the North Side. She said nothing good ever happens past the railroad tracks. And yet, here was a key. It was old, and rusted with a piece of masking tape wrapped around the top that said 4B. I sat there for a long time trying to make sense of it. Had my wife been in trouble? Did she owe money? Was she sick and hiding it? The Etta I knew didn't keep secrets. We shared everything. Or so I thought. Suddenly the front door burst open downstairs. There was no knock, no doorbell, just the sound of the lock turning and the door slamming against the wall. I put the key and the note in my pocket and walked out to the landing. Tyrone and Courtney were standing in my foyer. They didn't wipe their feet. Courtney was wearing muddy heels and she was tracking dirt all over the rug Etta had scrubbed by hand just last week. Tyrone looked up at me. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't ask if I needed a glass of water. "Where is the deed, Dad?" Tyrone asked. His voice was flat, cold. I walked down the stairs, slowly gripping the banister. My knees were aching, but I stood tall. "Hello to you too, son," I said. "I am doing fine, thanks for asking." "Cut the act," Sly Courtney snapped. She walked past me into the living room, looking around with a sneer on her face. "This place is a disaster. It smells like old people and cabbage. We need to gut this entire floor. Open concept. Knock down that wall. Rip out this carpet." She was redesigning my home while my wife's scent was still in the air. "Excuse me," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "This is my house. You do not come in here and talk about knocking down walls." "It is not your house anymore," Tyrone said, stepping forward. He puffed out his chest, trying to look big. He was always a soft boy, never did a day of hard labor in his life, but he tried to intimidate me. "Mom promised me this house," he said. "She said when she passed it would be my capital, for my business." I laughed a dry, bitter sound. "Your business, Tyrone? You mean the cryptocurrency scheme that lost you $50,000 last year? Or the dropshipping business before that? Etta never promised you this house. This is the house I paid for with 30 years of overtime." Courtney walked back from the kitchen holding an apple she had taken from the fruit bowl. She took a bite and chewed loudly. "Look, Sly, let us be realistic," she said, speaking to me like I was a slow child. "You are 68. You are alone. You cannot maintain a 3-bedroom house. The stairs are dangerous. The maintenance is too much. We are doing you a favor." "A favor?" I asked. "Yes," Tyrone said. "We found a nice facility for you. It is called Shady Pines. Assisted living. You get a room and meals. We sell this house, take the equity, and invest it. We will manage your money for you so you do not have to worry." I looked at my son. I looked at the man I taught to ride a bike, the man I sat up with when he had fevers, and I saw nothing but greed. He did not see a father. He saw a pile of cash standing between him and his debts. "Get out," I said. Tyrone blinked. "What?" I said, "Get out of my house. Both of you." Courtney threw the half-eaten apple onto the floor. "Listen to me, you ungrateful old man," she hissed. Her face twisted into something ugly. "We are trying to be nice, but if you want to play hardball, we can do that. You are grieving. You are confused. It would be very easy to call social services and tell them you are a danger to yourself." "Is that a threat?" I asked, stepping closer to her. "It is a promise," she said. Tyrone grabbed her arm, but he was looking at me. "Dad, just give us the papers. Do not make this ugly. You are old. You are going to forget to turn the stove off one day. You are going to fall. Why wait for a tragedy? Just sign the house over and go to the home. It is for the best." I felt the rusty key in my pocket. It felt heavy against my leg. Etta knew. That is why she wrote the note, "Do not trust Tyrone." She saw this coming. I walked to the front door and opened it wide. The rain was still falling. "I am not signing anything," I said, "and if you ever threaten me again, I will call the police and have you trespassed. Now get off my property before I forget that I am a Christian man." Tyrone glared at me. His hands were balled into fists, but he was a coward. He wouldn't strike me. "Not yet." "Fine," he spat. "Have it your way, old man. But remember this. You are alone now. Nobody cares about you but us. And when you get sick, and you will get sick, don't come crying to us." He grabbed Courtney, and they marched out into the rain. I slammed the door and locked the deadbolt. Then I slid the chain lock. Then I dragged a heavy dining chair and propped it under the handle. I sank down onto the bottom step of the stairs and put my head in my hands. The silence of the house was deafening now. They were right about one thing. I was alone. But I reached into my pocket and pulled out the key. Unit 4B, North Side. Why Etta? Why would you send me to that hellhole? I looked at the clock. It was 4 in the afternoon. The banks were closing, the lawyer offices were closing, but storage units are usually open late. I stood up. My joints popped and my back ached, but a fire had been lit inside me. They thought I was a feeble old man who would just roll over and die. They thought they could bully me into a nursing home and steal the only thing I owned. They were wrong. I grabbed my coat and my flashlight. I walked out the back door to avoid seeing them if they were parked down the street. I climbed into my truck and turned the key. The engine roared to life, a sound I usually loved, but today it sounded like a growl. I backed out of the driveway and pointed the truck north, toward the factories, toward the shadows, toward the secret my wife had kept for 30 years. I did not know what I would find in Unit 4B. Maybe it was debt, maybe it was shame, but whatever it was the only weapon I had left, and I was going to use it. The drive took 40 minutes. The neighborhoods changed from trimmed lawns to cracked pavement and boarded-up windows. I pulled up to the gate of Northside Storage. It was a miserable place surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with razor wire. I punched in the code Etta had written on the back of the note. The gate groaned and slid open. I drove through the rows of metal doors until I found number 4B. It was in the back corner, hidden in the shadows. I got out of the truck. The rain was coming down harder now. I put the rusty key into the lock. It was stiff. I had to wiggle it and use both hands to turn it. Finally, with a loud click, it gave way. I grabbed the handle of the roll-up door and pulled. It was heavy. It screeched metal on metal, echoing in the empty lot. I lifted it all the way up and shined my flashlight into the darkness. I expected to see nothing, or maybe boxes of old clothes. But what the beam of light revealed made my knees buckle. I had to grab the door frame to keep from falling into the mud. It wasn't empty, and it wasn't junk. From floor to ceiling, the unit was packed. But it wasn't what you think. It was chaos. It looked like a hoarder's nest. Hundreds of cardboard boxes stacked haphazardly. Old furniture covered in dusty sheets. Paintings stacked against the walls with no frames. My heart sank. Was this it? Was my wife sick? Was she a hoarder who spent our grocery money on trash for 30 years while I worked overtime? I walked inside, the air smelling of dust and old paper. I kicked a box in frustration. "Is this your secret, Etta?" I whispered to the dark. "Trash. You left me a room full of trash and a son who wants to bury me." I was so angry I wanted to scream. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my lighter. I don't smoke anymore, but I keep it for habit. I flicked it on. The flame danced in the dark. I looked at a stack of old canvases in the corner. I thought about burning it all, just setting it on fire and walking away, letting the memory of this betrayal burn to ash. I lowered the lighter toward the corner of a painting that was sticking out. It was covered in grime. But just as the flame got close, the light caught something. A signature in the corner, and a piece of paper taped to the back of the frame. I pulled the lighter back. I wiped the dust off the paper with my thumb. It was an appraisal certificate, dated 1995. I shined my flashlight on the number at the bottom of the certificate. I blinked. I wiped my glasses and looked again, valued at $50,000. I dropped the lighter. It clattered on the concrete floor. I looked around the room. Hundreds of boxes, furniture, sculptures. I wasn't standing in a pile of garbage. I was standing inside a gold mine. And suddenly my phone buzzed in my pocket, a text message from Tyrone. "I know you are not at home, old man. Don't think you can hide money from us. We will find whatever Mom left and we will take it. It is over." I looked at the phone, then I looked at the treasure surrounding me. "No, son," I said to the silence. "It is not over. It has just begun." The morning sun did not shine on the north side. It just turned the gray sky a lighter shade of bruised purple. I sat in the cab of my 1998 Ford pickup truck, listening to the engine idle. It had a rhythmic knock that I had been meaning to fix for 6 months, but today that sound was the only familiar thing in a world that had turned upside down. I shifted the truck into gear and pulled away from the curb. My house, the one Tyrone wanted to sell out from under me, disappeared in the rearview mirror. I was not running away. I was hunting. I was hunting for the truth my wife Etta had buried for 3 decades. The drive to the north side took 45 minutes, and every mile felt like a descent into a different country. The manicured lawns of my neighborhood gave way to cracked sidewalks and overflowing dumpsters. The brick houses turned into boarded-up storefronts and liquor stores with bars on the windows. I gripped the steering wheel tight. Etta was a woman who wore white gloves to church on Sundays. She was a woman who ironed my work shirts until the creases were sharp enough to cut paper. She was terrified of disorder. She was terrified of crime. So why in God's name did she have a storage unit in a place where the streetlights had been shot out years ago? I pulled up to the gate of Northside Storage. It looked like a prison yard. A chain-link fence topped with razor wire surrounded rows of rusted metal buildings. Weeds grew waist-high through the cracks in the asphalt. A sign hung crookedly on the gate reading, "Keep out." I punched in the code Etta had written on the back of the note. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the gate groaned and shuddered open just wide enough for my truck to squeeze through. I drove slowly past rows of identical metal doors. Some were dented. Some had spray paint on them. I counted the numbers until I saw it. Unit 4B. It was tucked in a dark corner where the shadows seemed to pool like black water. I killed the engine. The silence that followed was heavy. I could hear the distant sound of a siren and the caw of a crow sitting on the fence. I took a deep breath. My chest hurt. It was a physical ache that started in my heart and radiated out to my fingertips. I stepped out of the truck. The air smelled of wet cardboard and gasoline. I walked up to the door of Unit 4B. The lock was an old, heavy brass padlock coated in a layer of grime. I pulled the key from my pocket. My hand was shaking. I told myself it was just the cold, but I knew better. I was afraid. I was afraid of what I would find. I was afraid that the woman I loved had a dark side. Maybe she had a gambling addiction. Maybe she was in debt to bad people. Or maybe, and this thought hurt the most, maybe she just wanted a place that was hers alone, a place where I was not allowed. I shoved the key into the lock. It stuck. I jiggled it, cursing under my breath. Finally, I felt the tumbler's catch. With a sharp click, the shackle popped open. I pulled the lock off and threw it on the ground. I grabbed the handle at the bottom of the roll-up door. It was cold and greasy. I pulled. Nothing happened. It was rusted shut. I gritted my teeth and planted my feet. I pulled again, putting my back into it. With a screech that sounded like a dying animal, the door jerked upward about 2 feet. I bent down and shoved it the rest of the way up. It slammed into the metal housing at the top, sending a shower of dust and rust flakes down onto my shoulders. I took a step back and coughed, waving the dust away. I pulled my flashlight from my belt and clicked it on. The beam cut through the gloom and illuminated the inside of the unit. I stood there, frozen. My mouth fell open. It was full, packed from the concrete floor to the metal ceiling. But it was not gold. It was not money. It was not anything that made sense. It looked like a landfill. Hundreds of cardboard boxes were stacked in chaotic, teetering piles. Old furniture was shoved into corners covered in dirty drop cloths. Picture frames were stacked against the walls with their backs facing out. There were lamps with no shades, stacks of old magazines, bundles of newspapers tied with twine. I walked inside the beam of my flashlight, playing over the mess. The smell hit me then. It smelled of old paper dust and time. It smelled like a library that had burned down and been left to rot. I felt my knees give way. I sat down heavily on a plastic crate near the door. The flashlight dangled from my hand, its beam highlighting a water stain on the floor. Hoarding. The word echoed in my mind. My wife was a hoarder. I thought about all the times I had suggested we go on a vacation and she said we could not afford it. I thought about the winter I wore a coat with a broken zipper because we needed to save money for the heating bill. I thought about how she clipped coupons every Sunday morning, treating it like a religious ritual. And all that time she was paying rent on this. She was spending our hard-earned money to store garbage in a dangerous part of town. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, but it was hot with anger. I felt like a fool. I had worked 2 jobs for years. I had missed dinners. I had missed holidays, all to put money in the bank. And she had been funneling it here, to this tomb of junk. Why, Etta? I whispered to the silence. Why did you do this to us? I stood up and kicked the nearest box. It felt solid and heavy. It slid across the floor and hit the wall with a dull thud. I kicked another one. A stack of magazines toppled over, spilling across the floor. I wanted to destroy it. I wanted to erase this secret. If my son Tyrone saw this, he would laugh. He would tell me I was right to be put in a home. He would say, "See, Dad, Mom was crazy, and you are too." I reached into my pocket and pulled out my old Zippo lighter. I flicked the lid open. The metallic clink was loud in the small space. I struck the flint. A yellow flame danced into existence, casting long, flickering shadows against the walls. I looked at the pile of junk. It would burn fast. The paper, the wood, the dry fabric. One touch of this flame and 30 years of lies would turn to ash. I could walk away. I could tell Tyrone the unit was empty. I could go back to my empty house and live out my days with my dignity intact. I walked toward a stack of canvases leaning against the back wall. They were wrapped in brown butcher paper that was torn and dusty. They looked like kindling, perfect for starting a fire. I lowered the lighter. The heat from the flame warmed my hand. I watched the edge of the brown paper curl slightly from the heat. Burn it, I thought. Burn it all sly. But as the flame got closer, the light caught something. The paper on the front canvas had a large tear in it. Through the tear I saw a flash of color, a deep, vibrant blue and a stroke of bright red. I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the wheel of the lighter. It looked like a painting. Probably some garage sale trash she picked up for $1. Etta loved garage sales. She would bring home ceramic cats and chipped vases and tell me they were treasures. I sighed and snapped the lighter shut. The darkness rushed back in. I could not do it. I was angry, but I was not an arsonist. And this was still Etta. This mess was part of her. I reached out and grabbed the edge of the torn paper on the canvas. I ripped it away. Dust billowed up, making me sneeze. I shined my flashlight on the painting. It was an oil painting. It depicted a street scene at night. There were men in zoot suits and women in flapper dresses dancing under streetlights. A jazz band was playing on a corner. The colors were rich and moody. The brushstrokes were thick and energetic. It was beautiful. I wiped the dust from the surface with my sleeve. It did not look like the kind of painting you find at a garage sale. It looked real. It looked important. I grabbed the frame and turned the painting around. The back was covered in brown paper backing that was brittle with age. Taped to the center of the backing was a plastic sleeve. I brought the flashlight closer. Inside the sleeve was a folded document. I pulled it out. My rough fingers struggled with the delicate paper. I unfolded it carefully. It was a certificate of authenticity and an appraisal report. The letterhead was from a gallery in New York City. The date stamped at the top was October 14th, 1995. I adjusted my glasses and read the text. Artist Jacob Lawrence. Title Harlem Street Scene. Medium oil on canvas. My eyes scanned down to the bottom of the page. There was a section labeled Estimated Value. I blinked. I wiped my glasses on my shirt and looked again. The number was typed clearly. $50,000. I felt the air leave my lungs. $50,000. In 1995. I dropped the paper. It fluttered to the floor. I looked at the painting again. This dirty, dusty canvas leaning against a wall in a rat-infested storage unit was worth more than my annual salary at the post office. I turned around and shined the light on the rest of the unit. The chaos suddenly looked different. I walked over to a stack of boxes. I opened the top one. Inside, wrapped in bubble wrap, was a sculpture. It was a bronze figure of a woman with her hands raised to the sky. I lifted it out. It was heavy. On the bottom was a sticker with a catalog number. I opened another box. Books. Not just any books. First editions. I saw a copy of Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. The dust jacket was pristine inside a plastic cover. I opened the cover. It was signed. My hands started to tremble so hard I almost dropped the flashlight. This was not hoarding. This was not trash. I moved frantically from box to box. I pulled a sheet off a piece of furniture. It was a mid-century modern chair made of teak and leather. It looked like something from a museum. I found a box filled with old vinyl records, but they were not scratched-up copies of pop songs. They were rare blues recordings, test pressings, things collectors would kill for. I sat back down on the crate. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Etta, my quiet Etta, my wife who clipped coupons for 50 cents off laundry detergent. She had not been buying trash. She had been investing. I looked at the appraisal certificate on the floor again. $50,000. That was just one painting. There were dozens of canvases stacked against that wall. There were hundreds of boxes. I did the math in my head and the numbers made me dizzy. If that painting was worth $50,000 30 years ago, what was it worth now? And if everything in here was of similar quality, I was sitting in the middle of a fortune. I stood up and walked to the door of the unit. I looked out at the desolate lot. A stray dog was sniffing at a tire a few yards away. Nobody knew. Nobody had a clue. Tyrone thought I was a broke old man with a house he could sell for a quick buck. Courtney thought I was a burden. They thought they had won. I looked back at the painting of the jazz dancers. Etta had saved this. She had built this. She had kept it safe from the world and safe from me until the right moment. "Please forgive me," the note had said. Forgive her. She had just handed me the keys to a kingdom. But then a cold thought washed over me. I was alone in the worst part of town with millions of dollars in art, protected by a tin door and a rusty padlock. And my son was coming. I remembered the text message Tyrone had sent. "We will find whatever Mom left and we will take it." If he found this, he would take it all. He would sell it for pennies on the dollar to pay his gambling debts. He would burn through Etta's legacy in a year. I could not let that happen. I grabbed the handle of the door and slammed it shut. The sound was like a gunshot. I put the padlock back on and snapped it closed. I tugged on it 3 times to make sure it was secure. I got back in my truck and locked the doors. I sat there for a moment, breathing hard. I needed help. I could not move this alone. I could not sell this alone. I needed someone who knew about art, someone who knew about money, and someone who could keep a secret. I reached for my phone. There was only one person I could trust, an old friend from the army who had gone on to become an appraiser. He lived 3 hours away, but I knew he would come. I dialed the number. "Watson," I said when he answered. "It is Sly. I need you to get in your car and drive to Chicago right now. And bring your magnifying glass. You are not going to believe what I just found." I drove home with the Harlem street scene painting wrapped in an old moving blanket buckled into the passenger seat like a fragile passenger. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned the color of ash. I had a fortune sitting next to me, but all I could feel was the target painted on my back. I parked the truck in the garage and waited until the street was empty. I moved fast for an old man. I hustled that painting into the house and slid it deep under my bed, pushing it behind boxes of winter coats and old shoes. I barely had time to wash the dust of the storage unit off my hands when I heard a car door slam outside. I peeked through the blinds. It was Tyrone and Courtney. But they were not alone. A woman was with them. She was wearing a beige pantsuit and carrying a leather clipboard. She looked official. She looked like trouble. I sat down in my recliner and picked up a newspaper. I tried to slow my breathing. I had to be calm. I had to be the confused, grieving widower they wanted me to be. They did not knock. They just walked in like they owned the place. "Dad," Tyrone called out. "We brought a guest." I lowered the paper. The woman in the beige suit stepped forward. She had a smile that looked like it was practiced in a mirror. "Mr. King," she said, "my name is Mrs. Linda. I am a social worker. Your son and daughter-in-law asked me to come by and do a wellness check." "A wellness check?" I asked, my voice rough. "I am not sick." Courtney sighed loud and dramatic. "See, Linda, this is what we were talking about. He is in denial." She walked over to the kitchen. "Oh my God," she screamed. "Tyrone, come here quick." I stood up, my knees popping. "What is it?" I walked into the kitchen. Courtney was standing by the stove, pointing at a burner. The gas was off, but the dial was turned slightly. "He left the gas on again," she said, looking at Ms. Linda with wide, fearful eyes. "We are so lucky the house did not blow up." I looked at the stove. I had not cooked anything since breakfast, and I knew for a fact I had turned it off. I checked it 3 times before I left the house. That was my routine. I did not leave that on, I said. "Dad." "Stop lying," Tyrone said. His voice was full of fake pity. "Remember yesterday? You left the water running in the bathroom and flooded the floor." I looked at him. That never happened. The bathroom floor was dry as a bone. They were making things up. They were painting a picture of a man who could not take care of himself. Ms. Linda was writing furiously on her clipboard. She looked at me with eyes that were cold and calculating. "Mr. King, do you know what day it is?" she asked. "It is Wednesday," I said. "And do you know who the president is?" I told her. I answered every question perfectly. But every time I did, Courtney or Tyrone would shake their heads and whisper loud enough for her to hear. "He is having a good day today," Courtney whispered. "Usually he does not even know who we are." That hurt. That hurt worse than the physical pain in my back. To hear them lie about my mind, to hear them strip away my dignity right in front of a stranger. Miss Linda walked around the living room, running a finger over the dust on the mantel. The house is quite cluttered, she said. It is a fall hazard, and the hygiene seems lacking. I looked at my home. It was clean. Etta had kept it spotless, and I had kept it up. There was a little dust, sure, but it was not a hazard. They are lying, I said, my voice rising. I am perfectly capable of living here. Dad, please calm down, Tyrone said, stepping close to me. You are getting agitated again. This is not good for your blood pressure. I saw what they were doing. If I got angry, I looked unstable. If I stayed quiet, I looked confused. It was a trap. I need to sit down, I said. I went back to my recliner. My heart was hammering. This was not just a visit. This was an evaluation, and the verdict had already been decided before they walked through the door. I need some tea, I said. My throat is dry. I will get it, Dad, Tyrone said. No, I said. I can get my own tea in my own house. I pushed myself up and walked back to the kitchen. They stayed in the living room talking to Ms. Linda. I filled the kettle and put it on the stove. I made sure to turn the dial correctly. I stood by the counter waiting for the water to boil. The kitchen door was open just a crack. I leaned in close to listen. Is it enough? Courtney asked, her voice a low hiss. Ms. Linda let out a breath. It is a start, but he is lucid. He answered the questions correctly. I cannot just sign the order based on a dusty shelf and a stove dial. You promised, Tyrone said. He sounded desperate. You said if we got you in here you could write the report. I can write that he is at risk, Linda said. But for full guardianship, you need a doctor to sign off on dementia. Or a major incident. If he hurts himself or causes a fire, then we have a case. I gripped the counter. This woman was not a real social worker. Or if she was crooked. She was a friend of Courtney, probably paid off to ruin me. Then I heard Tyrone's phone buzz. I have to take this, he said. I heard his footsteps moving toward the hallway away from the women. I crept closer to the door. Yeah, I am here, Tyrone whispered. Look, I told you I would have it. Silence. Then his voice went up an octave tight with fear. No, please do not do that. I need more time. Just 1 week. We are selling the house. The equity is huge. I will pay you double the interest. Silence again. 200,000, Tyrone said. I know how much it is. You do not have to remind me. Please, man, do not hurt her. Do not come here. He hung up. I heard him panting like a dog that had been running. $200,000. I felt the blood drain from my face. My son was not just broke. He was in debt to people who hurt people. That is why he was so desperate. That is why he needed the house. He was drowning, and he was using me as a life raft. Courtney walked into the hallway. I heard the click of her heels. What did he say? She asked. He gave me 7 days, Tyrone said, his voice shaking. 7 days or they start breaking fingers. Courtney swore. We cannot wait for a doctor, she hissed. We need that power of attorney now. We need to list the house by Friday, but he will not sign it, Tyrone said. Make him sign it, Courtney said. Scare him. Tell him he is going to a state facility if he does not sign. Tell him the police are coming. I do not care what you tell him, Tyrone, just get the signature. Once we have the house, we can pay the debt and put him in Shady Pines. It is the cheapest place I could find. We dump him there and we are free. Free. They wanted to dump me in a warehouse for the dying so they could pay off a gambling debt. The kettle started to whistle. I grabbed it off the burner before it could scream. I poured the water into a cup. My hands were shaking for real now, not from age but from rage. I had to think fast. If I went out there and confronted them, they would get violent. Tyrone was desperate. A desperate man is a dangerous man. I could not fight him. I was 68. He was 35. I needed to buy time. I needed to get them out of my house so I could move the art. I looked at the teacup. I had an idea. I put the cup on a saucer. I let my shoulders slump. I relaxed my face, letting my mouth hang open a little. I shuffled my feet. I walked back into the living room. I made sure my steps were uneven. Here's the tea, I mumbled. I walked toward the coffee table. When I got close to Tyrone, I let my hands spasm. The cup tipped. Hot water splashed onto the rug and over my own shoes. Oops, I said, my voice weak. Dad, watch out, Tyrone said, jumping back. I dropped the saucer. It shattered on the floor. I stood there staring at the mess, looking lost. I am sorry, I said. My hands, they just stopped working. Courtney looked at Ms. Linda. See, she said, pointing at me. He cannot even hold a cup. He is a danger to himself. Ms. Linda nodded, making a note. That is concerning. Tyrone stepped over the broken china. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. Dad, listen to me, he said. He put a hand on my shoulder. His grip was tight, too tight. We are worried about you. You are getting worse. We want to help you, but we cannot help you if you do not let us." He unfolded the paper. It was thick with legal jargon, but I saw the words at the top. Power of attorney. "Just sign this, Dad," he said. "It just lets me pay the bills for you. It lets me hire a nurse to come in and clean up. You want that, do not you? You want to stay here." I looked at the pen he was holding out. It looked like a weapon. If I signed that paper, my life was over. They would sell the house out from under me before the ink was dry. But if I refused, Tyrone might snap. He had 7 days. He was a ticking bomb. I reached out and took the pen. My hand trembled. I let the pen hover over the paper. I saw the hunger in Courtney S. eyes. She was practically drooling. I lowered the pen. Then I dropped it. "I am so tired," I whispered. I rubbed my eyes. I cannot read the words. They are swimming. "Just sign on the line, Dad," Tyrone said, his voice edgy. "You do not need to read it, trust me." "I cannot," I said. "I feel dizzy. I need to lie down." I started to shuffle toward the bedroom. "Dad, come back here," Courtney snapped. I stopped and turned around. I put on my best confused face. "Who are you again?" I asked. "Courtney S." Jaw dropped. Tyrone looked at Miss Linda. "He does not know who she is," Tyrone said. I turned back to the bedroom. "I will sign it tomorrow," I mumbled. "After I sleep. My brain is tired." I went into my room and closed the door. I heard them arguing in the hallway. "He is losing it," Tyrone said. "We have to get him to sign tomorrow." "We will," Courtney said. "We will come back in the morning. We will bring breakfast. We will be so nice he won't know what hit him. And if he still won't sign, we will forge it." I practiced his signature. It is shaky anyway. They left. I heard the front door close. I heard the car drive away. I did not move for 5 minutes. I stood with my ear against the wood of the door, listening to the silence of the house. When I was sure they were gone, I locked the bedroom door. Then I went to the window and checked the street. Empty. I let out a breath I had been holding for an hour. I stood up straight. The confused old man vanished. I was not tired. I was wide awake. I went to the closet and pulled out my old army duffel bag. I started packing. Not clothes. Documents. My birth certificate. The deed to the house. My passport. I could not stay here. Not with the painting under the bed. Not with Tyrone coming back in the morning with a pen in one hand and a forgery plan in the other. But first I had to make a call. I pulled out my phone. I scrolled down to a number I had not called in 10 years. Watson. He was the best appraiser in the Midwest. He was also the only man I knew who could keep his mouth shut. We served in Vietnam together. He owed me his life. I dialed the number. It rang 4 times. "Hello," a gruff voice answered. "Watson it is, Sly. Sly. I have not heard your voice since the reunion. Is everything okay?" "No," I said. Etta passed. There was a silence. "I am sorry, Sly. She was a good woman." "She was," I said. "But that is not why I am calling. Watson, I need you. I need you to get in your car and drive to Chicago tonight. Tonight." "Sly, I am in Detroit. That is a 5-hour drive." "I know," I said. "But I found something. Etta left me a storage unit. So, it is probably full of old clothes." "No, Watson," I said. "I found a painting. It has paperwork from 1995 saying it was worth $50,000. I heard a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "Who is the artist?" "Jacob Lawrence," I said. Watson swore softly. "Sly, if that is real." "It is real," I said. "And that is not all. There are sculptures, first edition books. It is a museum, Watson, but I have a problem." "What problem?" "My son," I said. "He is in deep with bad people. He wants to put me in a home and take everything. He does not know about the unit yet, but he will find out. I need to know what this stuff is worth, and I need to move it before morning." I heard the jingle of keys on the other end. "I am putting my boots on," Watson said. "Text me the address. I will be there by midnight." I hung up. I looked at the painting peeking out from under the bed. The jazz dancers looked alive in the dim light. They were dancing on the edge of a precipice just like me. I had a few hours. I needed to be ready. I went to the kitchen and got a trash bag. I went to the medicine cabinet and dumped all my pills into it. My blood pressure meds, my arthritis pills, everything. If they were planning to gaslight me about my health, I would give them a show. I went back to the bedroom and pulled the painting out. I wrapped it in a fresh sheet and taped it shut. Then I sat in the dark and waited. I was not the victim here. They thought they were hunting a wounded animal, but they forgot one thing. Animals fight hardest when they are cornered. Watson arrived 20 minutes later in his battered station wagon that smelled of stale cigar smoke and old leather. He stepped out into the rain wearing a trench coat that had seen better days and a fedora pulled low over his eyes. He looked around the desolate storage yard with the suspicion of a man who had seen too many bad deals go down in places just like this. "Sly," he grumbled, walking toward me with a limp he had carried since the Tet offensive. "You better have a good reason for dragging an old man out of bed at midnight to the worst zip code in Chicago. I hope you did not kill somebody." I did not say a word. I just motioned for him to come inside Unit 4B. Watson stepped over the threshold and stopped. He looked at the mountain of boxes, the teetering stacks of furniture, and the layers of dust that coated everything like gray snow. He let out a dry laugh that sounded like sandpaper rubbing together. "You called me for this?" he asked, shaking his head. "Sly, I know you are grieving. Grief makes people do strange things. But this is just a pile of junk. Your wife was a hoarder. It happens. You do not need an appraiser. You need a dumpster." I did not argue. I just walked over to the cot where I had laid the Jacob Lawrence painting. I pulled back the sheet I had covered it with. Watson's eyes narrowed. He took a step closer. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a pair of white cotton gloves and a jeweler S-loop. He put the gloves on with the reverence of a surgeon preparing for an operation. He leaned in close to the canvas. He hummed a low note in his throat. He looked at the signature. He looked at the brushstrokes. Then he turned the painting over and examined the appraisal letter from 1995. When he looked back at me, his face had changed. The grumpiness was gone, replaced by a look of shock that made him look 10 years younger. "Where did she get this, Sly?" he whispered. "I do not know," I said. "It was just in here." Watson did not say anything else. He turned back to the room. He started moving boxes. He was not gentle anymore. He was frantic. He opened a flat crate leaning against the wall. Inside was a piece of cardboard with crude drawings on it in oil stick. It looked like something a child would draw. A crown, a skull, words crossed out. I thought it was trash. Watson looked at it and nearly dropped his flashlight. "Jean-Michel Basquiat," he said, his voice trembling. "This is from the late 70s, before he was famous, when he was tagging Samo on walls in Lower Manhattan. Sly, do you have any idea what this is?" I shook my head. He kept digging. He found a box wrapped in acid-free tissue paper. Inside was a program from the March on Washington signed by Dr. King himself. He found first editions of James Baldwin and Langston Hughes. He found sculptures by Augusta Savage that were thought to be lost. He stopped moving after an hour. He sat down on a mid-century chair and took off his hat. He wiped sweat from his forehead even though it was 40 degrees in the unit. "Sly," he said, looking at me with serious eyes. "Etta was not a hoarder. She was a genius." "What do you mean?" I asked. "She bought this stuff when nobody wanted it," he explained. "In the 70s and 80s, people did not value black art. They called it primitive. They called it folk art. Galleries would not show it. Museums would not buy it. Etta must have gone to estate sales, flea markets, and artist studios and bought it all for pennies. She saw value where the rest of the world saw nothing. She preserved our history, Sly. She hid it in this dark room to keep it safe." I looked around the room. The dust did not look like dirt anymore. It looked like gold dust. "So it is worth something?" I asked. Watson laughed. It was a hysterical, high-pitched sound. "Worth something. Sly, get your calculator." He pulled a small notebook from his pocket and started scribbling numbers. He muttered to himself as he added them up. "The Lawrence is conservative at 200,000 now," he said. "The Basquiat on cardboard, that is raw. That is the stuff collectors kill for. 3 million easy, maybe 5 at auction. The books, the sculptures, the memorabilia." He stopped writing. He tapped the paper with his pen. He looked up at me. His face was pale. "Sly, you are not a millionaire," he said. I waited. "You are a multi-millionaire," Watson said. "Conservative estimate. Bottom of the barrel. Quick sale price. You are looking at $15 million. The world stopped spinning. The only sound was the rain drumming on the metal roof. $15 million. I sat down on a cardboard box because my legs refused to hold me up. 15 million. I thought about Etta clipping coupons. I thought about her sewing patches on my work trousers. I thought about the time she cried because she lost a $20 bill in the grocery store. She had lived like a pauper to build a kingdom. And she had done it all for us, for me, and for Tyrone. She kept me out of it to protect me. She knew I would have wanted to sell it. She knew I would have wanted to pay off the mortgage or buy a new car. She saved it for the future, and now that future was here. But before I could even process the number, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a harsh, angry sound that cut through the silence. I pulled it out, a text message from Tyrone. I read it, and the blood drained from my face. "I see you are at the North Side storage units, Dad. Courtney put a tracker on your truck last week because we knew you were losing it. What are you doing in the slums? Hiding money in a trash heap?" I stared at the screen. A tracker. They had tagged me like an animal. Another message popped up. "It does not matter. We are coming tomorrow morning with a junk crew. We are going to clean out that unit and find whatever you are hiding. Do not try to stop us. If you do, we will have the police there to take you to the psych ward. Go home, old man. It is over." I dropped the phone on the concrete. Tomorrow morning. I looked at Watson. He saw the look on my face. "What is it, Sly?" he asked. "My son," I said. "He is coming. Tomorrow morning. With a crew. He is going to clear it out." Watson stood up. "We have to move it. We have to get a truck right now." I shook my head. "Look at this stuff, Watson. It is fragile. It is packed floor to ceiling. If we try to move it in the rain in the middle of the night, we will damage it. We will ruin the value, and we cannot move $15 million worth of art in 5 hours with 2 old men and a station wagon." Watson looked around helpless. "So what do we do? You cannot let him take it. If he gets his hands on this, he will sell it for crack prices. Or worse, he will throw it in a dumpster because he does not know what it is." He was right. Tyrone saw the world through the lens of quick cash. If it did not look like money, he would trash it. He would look at a Basquiat and see a piece of cardboard with scribbles. He would throw $15 million into a landfill. Panic started to rise in my chest. I felt like I was drowning. I had the key to freedom in my hand, and my own son was coming to snatch it away. I paced the small space. Think, Sly. Think. You survived Vietnam. You survived 30 years at the post office. You can survive your greedy son. I looked at the boxes. I looked at the dust. I looked at the way the unit appeared to the untrained eye. It looked like garbage. Tyrone expected garbage. He expected the ravings of a senile old woman and her confused husband. He expected to find nothing of value. And Courtney, she was so arrogant. She thought she knew everything. She looked at the surface and never saw what was beneath. An idea started to form in my mind. It was crazy. It was dangerous. It was reckless. But it was the only play I had. I stopped pacing. I looked at Watson. "Watson," I asked, "do you still have that old box truck you use for estate cleanouts? The one with the rust on the side?" "Yeah," he said, suspicious. "Why? And do you still have those coveralls, the greasy ones?" "Sly." "What are you thinking?" Watson asked. I picked up my phone and texted Tyrone back. "It is just old junk, son. Please do not throw away your mother's memories." I hit send. "I am not going to move the art," I said to Watson. "I am going to leave it right here." "Are you crazy?" Watson shouted. "You are going to let him take it." "No," I said. "I am going to let him sell it." Watson looked at me like I had lost my mind. "Sell it? To who?" "To you," I said. I explained the plan. It was a gamble, a massive gamble. If it went wrong, I would lose everything. If Tyrone decided to look in one box, if Courtney decided to keep one painting because she liked the frame, it would be over. But I knew my son. He was lazy. He wanted quick cash. And he wanted to be right. He wanted to prove that I was a crazy old man hoarding trash. "I need you to come back here tomorrow morning," I told Watson. "But not as an appraiser. I need you to be a junk hauler, a bottom feeder. You need to look like you are doing them a favor by taking this trash off their hands." Watson started to smile, a slow, crooked smile. "You want me to buy a $15 million collection for what?" I looked at the Basquiat. I looked at the legacy my wife had left me. Offer them $500, I said, and make sure you get a receipt. Watson laughed. Sly, you are a dangerous man. I am not dangerous, I said, turning off the flashlight and plunging us back into darkness. I am just a father teaching his son a lesson he will never forget. I sat in my truck around the corner watching the sun bleed into the gray sky over the north side. It was 6 a.m. My coffee was cold, but my hands were sweating. This was it. This was the moment that would decide the rest of my life. If I played this wrong, I would lose $15 million and my dignity. If I played it right, I would lose my family, but I would keep my freedom. A large yellow rental truck turned the corner. It bounced over the potholes, its suspension groaning under the weight of nothing. Tyrone was driving. I could see his profile, his jaw set tight. Courtney was in the passenger seat. She was looking at her phone. She was always looking at her phone. They pulled up to the gate. I watched Tyrone punch in the code. He must have found it in my papers back at the house. The gate slid open and they drove through. I waited 2 minutes. I wanted them to get a good look at the unit. I wanted them to smell the dust and see the chaos. I wanted them to feel the hopelessness of cleaning out 30 years of accumulation. I put the truck in gear and followed them in. When I pulled up to Unit 4B, the door was already open. Tyrone was standing there with his hands on his hips looking at the mountain of boxes. He looked disgusted. He looked like a man who had just stepped in something unpleasant on the sidewalk. Courtney was standing a few feet away. She was holding a scented handkerchief over her nose and mouth. She was wearing designer jeans and heels in a storage yard. It would be funny if it wasn't so tragic. I parked the truck and stepped out. I let my shoulders slump. I made my hands shake. I put on the mask of the defeated old man. Please, I called out, my voice cracking. Please do not do this. Tyrone spun around. He looked at me with pure annoyance. Dad, go home, he said. You are just making this harder. Look at this mess. Mom was sick. This is disgusting. It is not disgusting, I said, shuffling toward them. It is memories. It is all we have left of her. Courtney pulled her phone out. She held it up high, angling it so she could get the piles of boxes in the frame. I saw the ring light flash in her eyes. She was live streaming. Hey guys, she said to her phone, her voice dropping into a fake sad register. I know I usually post happy stuff, but today is really hard. We are here cleaning out my father-in-law's storage unit. He is having a really tough time with reality. Look at this hoarding situation. It is heartbreaking. She panned the camera over the unit, showing the dusty sheets and the teetering stacks. Please send prayers, she said. We are trying to help him let go, but he is fighting us. Dementia is so cruel. She lowered the phone, and the sad face vanished instantly. It was replaced by a sneer. Sly, get out of the way, she snapped. We are on a schedule. The junk crew canceled, so we have to load this ourselves. I am not ruining my nails for your garbage. I walked past her into the unit. I went straight to a stack of boxes near the front. I grabbed one, hugging it to my chest. Just let me keep a few things, I begged. Just the small boxes. There might be photos. Tyrone snatched the box from my hands. It was heavy. It was filled with first edition books by Maya Angelou, but he did not open it. He did not look. He just threw it toward the rental truck. It hit the metal bed with a sickening thud. No photos, Dad, he said. It is trash. It smells like mildew. It is all going to the dump. I dropped to my knees. I was not acting about the pain in my joints, but I hammed it up. I grabbed the leg of a chair that was covered in a drop cloth. Not the chair, I cried. Etta loved this chair. Courtney walked over. She looked at the chair. It was a Hans Wegner Papa Bear chair, teak and original wool upholstery. It was worth $12,000 easily. To her, it looked like something from a thrift store basement. She kicked it. She pulled her foot back and kicked the leg of the chair with her sharp heel. I heard the wood groan. Let go of it, you crazy old man, she shouted. It is ugly. It is full of mites. I would not put this in my house if you paid me. She kicked it again. Vulture, she hissed. You are holding on to garbage while your son is drowning in debt. You are selfish. I let go of the chair. I covered my face with my hands and let out a sob. It was a real sob. I was crying for the chair. I was crying for the disrespect. I was crying because my daughter-in-law was kicking a masterpiece and my son was watching her do it. Get up, Dad, Tyrone said, grabbing my arm and hauling me to my feet. Stop making a scene. You are embarrassing us. I am embarrassing you, I asked, my voice trembling. You are throwing away your mother's life. It is not a life, it is a landfill, Courtney said. She waved her hand at the cavernous unit. Look at it. Look at. It goes back 20 feet. It will take us all day to clear this out. I hate this place. I hate this smell. She turned to Tyrone. We are not loading this, she said. It is too much. Just leave it. We will stop paying the rent and let the facility auction it off. No, Tyrone said. If we do that, we get nothing. Maybe there is some scrap metal in here. Maybe there are some old tools we can pawn. We have to clear it. I cannot touch this filth, Courtney screeched. I will get a rash. I stood there wringing my hands, waiting. I was waiting for the sound of an engine. I was waiting for salvation in the form of a rusted white box truck. And then I heard it. A loud backfire that sounded like a cannon shot echoed off the metal buildings. A truck turned the corner. It was a monstrosity. It was covered in rust spots, and the muffler was held on by wire. It chugged and wheezed as it rolled toward us. On the side in hand painted letters it said, Watson Hauling. We take your trash. My heart leaped. Watson. He had come through. The truck pulled up right behind Tyrone's rental. The engine died with a rattle. The driver's door creaked open. Watson stepped out. He looked magnificent. He was wearing grease-stained coveralls and a trucker hat that was so dirty you could not read the logo. He had a toothpick in his mouth. He looked like he had been sleeping in a dumpster. He walked over to us, hitching up his pants. He looked at Tyrone, then at Courtney, then at the open unit. He did not look at me. Looks like you folks got a problem, he said, his voice gravelly and low. Who are you? Courtney asked, looking at him like he was a bug. I am the guy who cleans up messes, Watson said. I was driving by and saw the gate open. Thought I might find some scrap. He walked past her and peered into the unit. He whistled. That is a lot of junk, he said. You folks moving out or getting evicted? We are cleaning it out, Tyrone said, stepping forward, puffing his chest out again. My mother died. She was a hoarder. Sorry for your loss, Watson said without an ounce of sympathy. Hoarding is tough. Lots of work. Lots of heavy lifting. You got a crew coming. No, Courtney said quickly. Our crew canceled. Watson nodded slowly, chewing on his toothpick. That is a shame. Going to take you two pretty city folks about 2 days to clear this out. And the dump fees alone will run you $300. Courtney looked at Tyrone. Her eyes were wide. She did not want to be here for 2 days. She did not want to lift boxes. You a hauler? She asked. I am, Watson said. But I am busy. Got a job across town. Just stop to look. Wait, Tyrone said. How much? Watson looked at the unit again. He walked in and kicked a box lightly. It was the box with the Augusta Savage sculpture. I held my breath. I do not know, he said, scratching his chin. It is mostly paper and old wood. Not much scrap value. A lot of labor. He turned back to them. Tell you what, I am feeling generous. I will take it all off your hands. I will clear it broom clean. I will haul it to the dump. You walk away right now. How much? Courtney asked again. I will do it for 500, Watson said. 500, Tyrone asked. You want us to pay you 500? No, Watson said. He reached into his dirty pocket and pulled out a wad of cash. It was mostly ones and fives, but there were a few hundreds on the outside. I will pay you $500, he said. I see a couple of lamps in there I might be able to sell at the flea market. Maybe some of the wood is good for burning. I will take the risk. 500 cash. Right now. Courtney's eyes locked onto the money. To her, $500 was a pair of shoes. But right now, it was freedom. It was a way out of this dirty, smelly place. And it was free money for garbage. Tyrone looked at the unit. He looked at the work involved. He looked at me. Dad, he said, do you want any of this stuff? I looked at the floor. I looked at the painting hidden under the sheet in the corner. It is just trash, I whispered, my voice breaking. Just memories. But if you want to sell it, go ahead. I cannot stop you. I saw the triumph in his eyes. He thought he was winning. He thought he was stripping me of the last piece of my wife. Done, Tyrone said, extending his hand. 500. And you take everything. Every single box. Everything, Watson agreed. He counted out $500. He licked his thumb as he peeled off the bills. He handed the money to Courtney. She snatched it like a starving dog. She stuffed it into her designer bag immediately. Hold on, Watson said, raising a hand. I need this legal. I do not want you coming back later saying I stole your family heirlooms. I need a receipt and a bill of sale. A bill of sale for trash. Courtney laughed. You are kidding, right? No joke, Lady Watson said, his face stone cold. I have been burned before. Write it down. He walked back to his truck and grabbed a clipboard and a pen. He handed it to Tyrone. Write this down, he commanded. I, Tyrone King, sell all contents of Unit 4B to Watson Hauling for the sum of $500. I relinquish all rights and ownership, sold as is, no returns. Tyrone laughed. He took the pen. He wrote it out quickly, his handwriting sloppy. He signed his name with a flourish. Sign it, Dad, he said, shoving the clipboard at me. It was Mom-esque stuff, too. I took the clipboard. My hand was shaking, but not from nerves, from adrenaline. This was the moment. This was the legal transfer. I read the words Tyrone had written. Sold as is. Relinquish all rights. I signed my name slowly. Sylvester King. Watson took the clipboard. He looked at it. He nodded. Then he turned to Courtney. You too, lady, he said. You took the money. I want your signature right there as a witness. Courtney rolled her eyes. She grabbed the pen and scribbled her name. Courtney King. Watson took the clipboard back. He ripped the top copy off and handed it to Tyrone. He put the original in his coveralls pocket and buttoned the flap. Pleasure doing business with you, he said. Now get out of my way. I got work to do. Courtney grabbed Tyrone's arm. Let us go, she said. I need a shower. I feel filthy. They walked back to their rental truck. Tyrone paused and looked at me. You see, Dad, he said. It is gone. It was just junk. Stop living in the past. We are going to sell the house next week. Get ready. He climbed into the truck and slammed the door. They drove off, kicking up mud, leaving me standing in the rain. I watched them go until the taillights disappeared. Then I turned to Watson. He was already pulling the ramp out of his truck. He looked at me and winked. We did it, Sly, he said. We just bought the Louvre for $500. I did not smile. I did not celebrate. I walked over to the unit and pulled the sheet off the Jacob Lawrence painting. The colors glowed in the gray light. It is safe now, Etta, I whispered. Then I turned to Watson. Let us load it up, I said. And be careful. That chair she kicked is worth more than her life. We worked in silence for the next 4 hours. We wrapped every painting in blankets. We packed the sculptures in foam. We treated every box like it held a bomb. When the unit was empty, I swept the floor. I left it broom clean just like the contract said. I climbed into the passenger seat of Watson's truck. My back was screaming and my hands were raw, but I felt lighter than I had in years. We drove out of the gate, leaving the north side behind. I pulled out the receipt Watson had given me. I looked at Tyrone's signature. I looked at Courtney's signature. They had signed away their future for $500. But the war was not over. They still had the deed to my house in their sights. And now that they thought I was broke and broken, they would come for it with everything they had. I took out my phone. I dialed the number for the toughest lawyer in Chicago, a woman named Strickland who ate sharks for breakfast. It rang twice. Strickland Law, she answered. Miss Strickland, I said. My name is Sylvester King. I have a signed contract. I have a $15 million art collection, and I have a son who just tried to bury me. I need to hire you, and I have the cash to pay the retainer. There was a pause on the line. Then I heard a sound I liked very much. The sound of a pen clicking open. Talk to me, Mr. King, she said. I am listening. The victory at the storage unit tasted sweet like cold water after a long march, but it did not last long. I barely had time to wash the grime of the north side off my hands when the flashing blue lights reflected against my living room window. It was 4 in the afternoon. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still the color of a fresh bruise. I looked out the window and saw a squad car parked at the curb. Behind it was Tyrone's rental truck. My heart hammered against my ribs. I thought for a second that Watson had betrayed me, or that Tyrone had somehow figured out the value of what he sold. But when I opened the front door, I saw something different in my son's eyes. It wasn't anger, it was triumph. He walked up the driveway flanked by 2 police officers. One was young and looked nervous. The other was older with a face carved out of granite. Courtney trailed behind them holding a manila envelope like it was a shield. Mr. King, the older officer said, touching the brim of his cap. I am Officer Miller. We have a domestic dispute call regarding the occupancy of this residence. There is no dispute, I said, standing in the doorway, blocking their path. This is my house. I have lived here for 40 years. My name is on the deed. Not anymore, Dad Tyrone said. He stepped forward and snatched the envelope from Courtney. He pulled out a document and handed it to the officer. Show him the will, Tyrone said. The officer took the paper and adjusted his glasses. He read it slowly. I watched his eyes scan the page. I knew what it was before he even spoke. This document states that upon her death, Etta King bequeathed the property located at this address solely to her son, Tyrone. King, the officer said. It also grants him immediate executor status. It is dated 3 months ago. Notarized. Let me see that, I said. The officer held it up but did not give it to me. I squinted at the signature at the bottom. It said Etta King. The loops were too big. The slant was wrong. Etta had a tight, small signature. She wrote like she was trying to save ink. This signature was sprawled across the line like a child practicing cursive. That is a forgery, I said, my voice steady. My wife did not sign that. She never would have signed that. It is real, Sly Courtney chimed in from the back. She signed it when you were at the bowling alley. She told us she wanted Tyrone to have a head start. She knew you would just let the house rot. You are lying, I said. I looked at the officer. This is a fake. You cannot kick me out of my own house based on a piece of paper they printed off the internet. Officer Miller looked uncomfortable. Sir, the document looks legal. It has a notary stamp. If you want to contest it, you have to do that in probate court. That is a civil matter. But right now, according to this, the house belongs to your son, and he wants you removed. I looked at Tyrone. He was smirking. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew the police would not start a forensic investigation on a front porch. They follow the paper, and he had the paper. I want him gone, Tyrone said to the officer. He is trespassing. He is unstable, officer. He has been wandering around dangerous neighborhoods all morning. He is confused and aggressive. I do not feel safe with him here. The officer looked at me. He saw an old man in work clothes. He saw the desperation in my eyes. Mr. King, he said, his voice softer now. We do not want to arrest you, but you cannot stay here tonight. If the owner asks you to leave, you have to leave. If you refuse, it is criminal trespassing. I gripped the door frame. My knuckles turned white. This was the house where I raised him. This was the house where I kissed his scraped knees. This was the house where I held his mother while she took her last breath. And now he was using men with guns to force me out. I need time, I said. I cannot just leave. I have nowhere to go. The officer looked at Tyrone. Can you give him a few days? Let him make arrangements. No, Tyrone said. The word hung in the air, heavy and cruel. No, I asked. You are going to put your father on the street. Tonight. You did this to yourself, Dad, Tyrone said. You are sick. You need help. If you leave now, we can get you into a facility tomorrow. But you cannot stay here. You are a liability. Officer Miller sighed. Sir, you have to go. You can grab some personal items, a bag, but you have to vacate the premises. I looked at the officer. I looked at my son. I realized then that arguing was useless. Tyrone wanted a fight. He wanted me to scream and throw a punch so he could have me arrested. He wanted to see me in handcuffs. That would fit his narrative perfectly. The crazy, violent old man who needed to be locked away. I was not going to give him that satisfaction. Fine, I said. Let me get my things. I turned to go inside, but Courtney pushed past me. I will get them, she said. We do not want you destroying the place out of spite. She ran up the stairs. I heard her heels clicking on the hardwood. I stood in the foyer with the 2 officers and my son. The silence was thick. Tyrone would not meet my eyes. He looked at the floor. He looked at the walls. He looked anywhere but at his father. You are making a mistake, son, I said quietly. I am securing my future, Tyrone muttered. You had your turn. Upstairs, I heard the sound of drawers being ripped open. I heard the closet door slam. Then I heard a window slide open. Everyone looked up. Suddenly, it began to rain clothes. My shirts, my trousers, my underwear. They came fluttering down from the second-story window, landing on the wet grass of the front lawn. Courtney was throwing my life out the window. She tossed my suitcase down. It hit the porch steps and bounced open. Then she started throwing my shoes, one by one. Oops, she called out from the window, her voice dripping with fake innocence. My hand slipped. Just trying to help you pack, Sly. I walked out onto the porch. My neighbors were coming out of their houses. Mrs. Higgins from next door was standing on her lawn with her hand over her mouth. The mailman had stopped his truck. They watched as my clothes landed in the mud. Tyrone walked out past me. He raised his voice so the whole street could hear. "I am sorry it has to be this way, Dad," he shouted. "We tried to get you help. We tried to get you to take your medication, but you are a danger to yourself. We cannot let you burn the house down." He was performing. He was painting the picture for the neighborhood. Poor Tyrone dealing with his senile father. I walked down the steps. I did not run to pick up my clothes. I walked slowly with my head up. I knelt in the grass and started gathering my shirts. They were wet and muddy. I found my good Sunday shoes. One was in the bushes, the other was near the curb. I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Mrs. Higgins. "Sly," she whispered. "What is happening? Do you need a place to stay?" I looked at her. She was a kind woman, but she could not stop this. "Go inside, Martha," I said gently. "You do not want to be part of this." Tyrone saw her. He walked over. "I am sorry, Mrs. Higgins," he said. "Dad is having an episode. He thinks people are stealing from him. The dementia is getting aggressive. We have to move him for his own safety." Mrs. Higgins looked at me. I saw the doubt in her eyes. Tyrone sounded so reasonable. And I was kneeling in the mud holding a wet shoe. I looked crazy. "It is okay, Martha," I said. "Just go inside." She patted my shoulder and retreated. I finished packing the suitcase. I shoved the muddy clothes inside. I did not have my toothbrush. I did not have my shaving kit. I did not have the photo of Etta that sat on my nightstand. Courtney came out of the house, dusting off her hands. "That is everything," she said. "Now get off our property." I zipped the suitcase shut. I stood up. My knees cracked. I was tired, bone-deep tired, but my mind was sharp as a razor. I looked at the house one last time. I looked at the flower beds Etta had planted. I looked at the porch swing I had hung. Then I looked at Tyrone. He was standing with his arms crossed, feeling like a king. "Good luck, son," I said. My voice was not loud, but it carried. It was flat and cold. "Good luck," Tyrone repeated, laughing. "I do not need luck, old man. I have the house. I won." I did not answer. I dragged my suitcase down the driveway. The wheels rumbled on the concrete. The police officers watched me go. Officer Miller looked ashamed, but he did not stop me. I walked to the corner. I did not look back. I pulled my phone out and called a taxi. I stood there in the damp evening air waiting. I looked like a homeless man, a vagrant. When the taxi pulled up, the driver hesitated. He rolled down the window just a crack. "You have money?" he asked, eyeing my muddy suitcase. I pulled a roll of cash from my pocket. It was part of the money I had kept hidden in the truck. "I have money," I said. He unlocked the door. I threw my suitcase in the back and climbed in. The car smelled of pine air freshener and stale cigarettes. "Where to?" the driver asked. "The shelter is on 5th Street. I looked at him in the rearview mirror. I wiped a smudge of mud off my cheek. "No shelter," I said. "Take me downtown." "Downtown?" the driver asked. "Where?" "The Ritz-Carlton," I said. The driver laughed. "You are joking, right? They are not going to let you in looking like that. Just drive," I said, peeling off a $100 bill and passing it through the partition. He took the money and shut up. We drove in silence. The city lights started to flicker on. We passed the post office where I had worked for 30 years. We passed the park where I proposed to Etta. We pulled up to the Ritz-Carlton. It was a palace of glass and gold light. The doorman was wearing a top hat. I got out. The driver popped the trunk. I grabbed my muddy suitcase. The doorman stepped forward, his hand raised to stop me. "Sir," he said, polite but firm, "you cannot be here." I did not stop. I walked right up to him. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my wallet. I did not pull out cash. I pulled out a black card. It was Etta S. card. One of the things I found in the documents she left me. I had activated it that morning. "I am checking in," I said, "and I want the penthouse suite. For a month." The doorman looked at the card. He looked at me. He saw the mud on my shoes. But he also saw my eyes. He saw that I was not a man who was asking. He stepped aside and opened the glass door. "Right this way, Mr. King." I walked into the lobby. It smelled of fresh lilies and money. I walked to the front desk, leaving muddy footprints on the marble floor. I checked in. I paid for the month in advance. I ordered a bottle of their best bourbon to the room. I took the elevator up to the top floor. The room was bigger than my entire house. It had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I took a shower. I scrubbed the mud off my skin. I washed the smell of the storage unit and the front lawn out of my hair. I put on the white hotel robe. I poured a glass of bourbon. I stood by the window and looked down at the city. Somewhere down there in the dark, Tyrone and Courtney were celebrating. They were probably drinking my wine and planning how to spend the money from the house sale. They thought I was sleeping under a bridge. They thought I was broken. I took a sip of the bourbon. It burned going down. A good burn. I picked up my phone. I dialed the number for Ms. Strickland, the lawyer. "It is Sly," I said. "I am here, Mr. King," she said. "Did you get the documents from the storage unit?" "I did," I said. "And I have something else. They kicked me out." "Forged will. Police involved," Good Strickland said. Her voice was sharp. "That is exactly what we wanted. They just committed fraud and elder abuse on public record. I want to destroy them," I said. "Not just win. I want to take it all." "We will," Strickland said. "But first, we let them feel safe. Let them spend money they do not have. Let them dig the hole deeper." I looked at the city lights. "They are going to sell the house," I said. "Let them try," Strickland said. "I am filing an injunction in the morning." "But Mr. King, there is something you should know about the house." "What about it?" "I pulled the deed history," Strickland said. "Your wife, Etta. She did something very clever 30 years ago." "What did she do?" "She put the land in a trust," Strickland said. "A charitable trust. You own the house structure, but the land underneath it belongs to the Etta King Foundation for Young Artists. And the trust has a clause." "What clause?" "If anyone other than you or Etta tries to sell the property, or if the resident is found to be abusive, the land lease terminates immediately. The house has to be removed or forfeited to the trust." I started to laugh. It started as a chuckle and turned into a roar. Etta. My brilliant, beautiful Etta. She had booby-trapped the house from the grave. So, if Tyrone tries to sell it, he is selling a pile of bricks on land he does not own, Strickland said. He is committing fraud against a buyer, and he is triggering an eviction against himself. I took another sip of bourbon. "Let him list it," I said. "Let him find a buyer, let him spend the deposit money." And then Strickland asked. And then I said, "We pull the rug out." I hung up the phone. I looked at my reflection in the glass. I did not look like a mailman anymore. I looked like a general. I raised my glass to the empty room. "To you, Etta," I whispered, "and to the long game." From the window of my penthouse suite at the Ritz-Carlton, I could not see my house, but I could feel what was happening to it. I felt it in my bones like the ache of an old fracture when it rains. My lawyer, Ms. Strickland, had hired a private investigator to keep an eye on the property. His name was Wallace, and he sent me photos every morning. The first photo broke my heart. They had painted the brick. My beautiful red brick house that had stood strong against 40 Chicago winters was now painted a blinding, sterile white. It looked like a dental clinic. It looked like it had no soul. They rented a dumpster. It sat in the driveway like a giant metal coffin. I zoomed in on the photos. I saw my recliner sticking out of the top. I saw Etta S. sewing table. I saw the rug we bought in New Orleans on our 10th anniversary. They were not just renovating, they were erasing us. Tyrone and Courtney moved in the same day they kicked me out. They wasted no time. They wanted to stake their claim. They wanted to show the world that they were the kings of the castle. 2 days later, they threw a party. Wallace sent me video footage taken from a car parked across the street. The bass from the music rattled the windows. Cars lined the street, blocking the driveways of my neighbors. These were not family friends. These were strangers. They were the kind of people Tyrone tried to impress. People with flashy clothes and empty eyes. I watched the video on my tablet, sipping my bourbon. I saw Courtney standing on the porch holding a glass of champagne. She was wearing a white dress like she was the Queen of England. She was laughing. Her head was thrown back and her mouth was open wide. She was holding court. A group of women stood around her, hanging on her every word. I turned up the volume. The microphone on Wallace's camera was good. It picked up her shrill voice over the thumping music. It was a nightmare, she was saying. The old man was totally losing it. He was hoarding trash. He was dangerous. We had to make a tough call. But honestly, it is a relief. The dead weight is finally gone. Now we can finally live the way we deserve. Dead weight. That is what I was to her. 40 years of labor. 40 years of paying taxes and raising a son. And I was just dead weight to be cut loose so she could float. Tyrone came out onto the porch. He had a cigar in his mouth. He looked like a caricature of a rich man. He put his arm around Courtney and kissed her cheek. To the new house, he shouted, raising a bottle of expensive vodka. To new beginnings. The crowd cheered. They drank my liquor. They danced on my floors. They celebrated their theft like it was a victory. But it was a false victory. It was a house of cards built on a foundation of lies, and underneath that foundation was a trapdoor they did not even know existed. While they were partying, the real world was waiting for them in the shadows. And the real world does not care about your housewarming party. The real world wants its money. The party ended at 3 in the morning. The hangover started at noon. But the headache Tyrone woke up to had nothing to do with vodka. His phone rang at 1 in the afternoon. He was sitting at my kitchen table nursing a cup of coffee and staring at the wall. The house was a wreck. Red plastic cups littered the floor. Someone had spilled wine on the new white carpet. Tyrone looked at the caller ID. His face went gray. He let it ring 3 times before he answered. "Hello," he said, his voice tight. I could not hear the other end of the conversation, but I knew who it was. It was the man he owed $200,000 to. The man who did not use banks or lawyers. "Yeah, I know what day it is," Tyrone said. He stood up and started pacing the kitchen. "Look, the house is ours. The old man is gone. We are listing it on Monday." He paused, listening. He wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. No, do not come here," he pleaded. His voice cracked. "I am good for it. The house is worth $500,000 easy. I will have the cash in 2 weeks, 30 days tops." He stopped pacing. He gripped the edge of the table. "Next week," Tyrone whispered. "I cannot do next week. The closing takes time. You have to give me a month." He listened again. His hand was shaking so bad he almost dropped the phone. "Okay," he said. "Okay, 10,000 by Friday, just as a good faith payment. I can do that." "Yes. 10,000. He hung up the phone and threw it across the room. It skidded across the counter and hit the toaster. He put his head in his hands. $10,000 by Friday. He did not have $10,000. He did not have $1,000. He had spent his last dime on the rental truck and the party supplies. He needed cash. Fast. Courtney walked into the kitchen. She was wearing a silk robe she had bought with one of the credit cards she opened in my name. She looked tired and hungover. "Who was that?" she asked, pouring herself some juice. "Just business." Tyrone lied. He did not tell her about the debt. He did not tell her about the threats. He wanted her to think he was in control. Courtney sat down. "We need to list the house," she said. "The market is cooling off, Tyrone. I saw a house down the street that has been sitting for 3 months. We need to move fast if we want to get the best price." "I know," Tyrone snapped. "I am handling it." "You better be," Courtney said. "I booked a decorator for next week. I want to redo the master bath before we sell. It adds value." "We do not have money for a decorator," Tyrone shouted. He slammed his hand on the table. Courtney recoiled. "What is wrong with you?" she asked. "Why are you so edgy? We won, Tyrone. We have the house. We have the credit cards. Relax." "I am relaxing," he yelled. "Just leave me alone." She stormed out of the room. Tyrone sat there alone in the kitchen. He looked around. He looked at the cabinets. He looked at the floorboards. He remembered something. "Mom," he whispered. Etta was old school. She did not trust banks completely. She lived through hard times. She always kept a stash, a rainy day fund. She used to hide cash in the house. Tyrone stood up. His eyes were wide and desperate. If Mom had money, she did not take it with her, he thought, and Dad did not take it. He left with one suitcase. He started to search. It began slowly. He checked the cookie jar. He checked the freezer. He looked inside the flour tin. Nothing. Then he got frantic. He went into the living room and started pulling books off the shelves. He shook them, hoping bills would fall out. He ripped the cushions off the sofa. He overturned the lamps. He went into our bedroom. He went through Etta's closet. He checked the pockets of her coats. He checked her shoes. Nothing. He was sweating now. Panic was rising in his throat like bile. He needed $10,000 by Friday, or he was going to get hurt. Badly. He went into the bathroom. The master bath. It was pink tile and old fixtures. Courtney hated it. He looked around. Where would she hide it? He opened the medicine cabinet. Just old pills. He looked under the sink, cleaning supplies. Then he looked at the toilet. The tank. It was a classic spot, a cliché. But Etta liked cliches. She said they were cliches because they worked. He walked over to the toilet and lifted the heavy porcelain lid of the tank. He set it on the floor. He looked inside. The water was clear. But there, taped to the underside of the lid, was a plastic freezer bag. Tyrone's heart leaped. He grabbed the bag and ripped it off the tape. It felt heavy. It felt substantial. He sat down on the closed toilet lid and opened the bag. His hands were shaking as he reached inside. He expected a stack of hundreds. He expected salvation. He pulled out a small leather-bound book, a diary. He shook the bag upside down. Nothing else fell out. No money, just a book. He threw the bag on the floor. He cursed loud and long. He opened the book. It was Etta S. handwriting. Her neat cursive filled the pages. He started to read, hoping maybe she wrote down where the money was. Maybe she wrote down a combination to a safe. He flipped through the pages. Dates, grocery lists, prayers. Then he stopped. A page dated 6 months ago caught his eye. Sly worries about money, Etta wrote. He works so hard. He does not know what we have. He thinks we are poor, but I have kept the secret safe. Tyrone leaned in closer. His eyes scanned the page. The art market is booming, she wrote. I checked the auction prices today. The Basquiat alone is worth millions. And the Jacob Lawrence. My God. We are sitting on a fortune. Tyrone froze. Basquiat. Lawrence. Millions. He read on. His breath came in short gasps. I went to the unit today, she wrote. Unit 4B. It is dusty, but everything is safe. I wrapped the sculptures in extra blankets. That storage unit is our future. It is our retirement. It is the legacy I will leave for Sly and Tyrone. Tyrone stood up. The book fell from his lap. Unit 4B. The memory hit him like a physical blow. The rain, the smell of mildew, the old man in the greasy coveralls. He remembered the boxes he had refused to open. He remembered the painting he had seen sticking out from under a sheet. He remembered Courtney kicking the chair. And he remembered the receipt. I, Tyrone King, sell all contents of Unit 4B to Watson Hauling for the sum of $500. He felt the blood drain from his face. His knees gave way and he slid down the wall until he was sitting on the bathroom floor. Millions. His mother had hidden millions of dollars in art in that unit, and he had sold it for $500. He had sold his future. He had sold his safety. He had sold the only thing that could save him from the loan shark. He started to hyperventilate. The room was spinning. He crawled out of the bathroom. He had to go back. He had to find that truck driver. He had to get it back. He ran down the stairs, screaming for Courtney. Courtney, he yelled. We have to go. We have to go right now. Courtney came out of the bedroom looking annoyed. What is it now? She asked. The unit, Tyrone gasped, grabbing his car keys. The storage unit. It was not trash, Courtney. It was not trash. What are you talking about? It was art, Tyrone screamed. Millions of dollars of art. Mom hid it there. I found her diary. We sold millions for $500. Courtney's face went white. She dropped her glass of juice. It shattered on the floor, spilling orange liquid over the white carpet, but neither of them noticed. Get in the car, Tyrone yelled, running for the door. We have to find that old man. We have to get it back. They ran out of the house, leaving the front door wide open. They jumped into the Mercedes and peeled out of the driveway, tires screeching. I sat in my hotel room watching the GPS tracker on Tyrone S. car move across the map on my tablet. He was heading north. He was heading back to the scene of the crime. I took a sip of bourbon and smiled. Run, son, I whispered. Run as fast as you can. But you cannot outrun a contract you signed with your own hand. Tyrone drove the Mercedes like he was trying to outrun the devil himself. He ran 2 red lights and nearly clipped a school bus as he screeched into the lot of Northside Storage. The rain had started again, a cold drizzle that made the asphalt shine like black glass. He did not bother with the gate code, he just tailgated a U-Haul truck that was leaving. He slammed the car into park and leaped out, leaving the door open and the engine running. He sprinted toward Unit 4B, his expensive Italian shoes splashing through puddles of oil and mud. The door to the unit was closed. The rusty padlock was gone, replaced by a shiny new one. He did not have the key. He did not care. He looked around for something heavy. He found a piece of rebar lying in the weeds near the fence. He jammed the metal bar into the hasp of the lock and pulled. He screamed with the effort, the veins in his neck bulging. The metal groaned. With a loud snap, the hasp gave way. He threw the lock on the ground and grabbed the handle of the roll-up door. He yanked it upward so hard it bounced off the stops at the top. He froze. Empty. It was completely empty. Not a box, not a chair, not a scrap of paper. The floor had been swept clean. The only thing left was the smell of old dust and the echo of his own heavy breathing. He walked into the empty space. He spun around looking at the bare metal walls as if the art might be hiding in the corners. Gone. The Basquiat, the Lawrence, the sculptures. $15 million. Gone. He fell to his knees on the cold concrete. He let out a scream that tore his throat raw. It was a sound of pure animal desperation. He punched the floor until his knuckles bled. He had held a winning lottery ticket in his hand, and he had sold it for $500. He scrambled up. He ran back to the car. He had to find Courtney. She was the one who kicked the chair. She was the one who complained about the smell. It was her fault. He drove home in a blind rage. When he pulled into the driveway, he did not even turn the car off. He stormed into the house. Courtney was in the kitchen trying to scrub the orange juice stain out of the white carpet. She looked up as he burst in. "Did you find him?" she asked, her eyes wide with panic. "Did you get it back?" Tyrone did not answer. He grabbed her by the shoulders and shook her. "It is gone," he screamed. "It is all gone. Empty. He took everything." Courtney tried to pull away. "You are hurting me," she cried. "Let go. You made me sell it," Tyrone shouted, shaking her harder. "You said it was trash. You said it smelled. You kicked a $12,000 chair, Courtney. Do you know what we did? We gave away our lives." She shoved him back. "Do not put this on me," she screamed. "You stood right there. You signed the paper. You were the one who wanted the $500. I listened to you," Tyrone yelled. "I always listen to you. We need to sell the house. We need to kick him out. We need to clear the unit. And now look at us. We are broke, Courtney. We owe $200,000 to a man who breaks legs for a living, and we just gave away the only thing that could save us." Courtney's face twisted. She slapped him. It was a sharp crack that echoed in the empty kitchen. "You are a loser, Tyrone," she hissed. "You were a loser when I married you, and you are a loser now. Your father outsmarted you. A mailman outsmarted you." Tyrone stared at her. The rage in his eyes turned cold. "Get out," he said. "What?" "Get out of my house," Tyrone said. "It is our house," she shrieked. "Not for long," he said. "When the loan shark finds out I do not have his money, he is going to take everything. So get out before I do something I regret." He turned his back on her and walked to the window. He looked out at the street. He was waiting. He was waiting for the black SUV with the tinted windows. He was waiting for the end. But the car that pulled up to the curb 20 minutes later was not a black SUV. It was a nondescript gray sedan. A large man in a cheap suit got out. He walked up the driveway with a purpose. Tyrone opened the door before the man could knock. "I do not have the money," he said, his voice flat. The man looked at him confused. "Are you Tyrone King?" he asked. "Yes." The man handed him a thick envelope. "You have been served," he said. He turned and walked away. Tyrone looked at the envelope. It had a return address embossed in gold ink, Strickland Law. He tore it open. His hands were shaking so bad he almost ripped the papers inside. He read the first page. It was a lawsuit. Plaintiff Sylvester King, defendants Tyrone King and Courtney King. The charges were listed in bold print. Elder abuse, conversion of property, fraud, forgery, intentional infliction of emotional distress. He flipped to the second page. It was a restraining order barring him from selling, renting, or modifying the property at the address he was standing in. He flipped to the third page. It was a demand for the return of all items sold from Unit 4B Northside Storage or their fair market value estimated at $15 million. Tyrone laughed. It was a dry hacking sound. He walked back into the kitchen where Courtney was packing a bag. "Look at this," he said, throwing the papers on the counter. Courtney read them. Her face went pale. "He hired Strickland," she whispered. "She is the most expensive lawyer in the city." "How? How did he afford her?" "He is broke," Tyrone said. "He is bluffing. He probably found some legal aid charity to take the case. Or maybe he promised them a cut of the money he thinks he has. He has a room at the Ritz," Courtney said. "I saw the charge on the card before I canceled it." Tyrone froze. "The Ritz." "He stole my credit card," Tyrone said. "That is how. He is digging his own grave. He is spending money that is not his." He picked up the lawsuit and crumpled it into a ball. "He wants to play legal games," Tyrone said. "Fine, we will play. But we are not going to play fair. He looked at Courtney. "You were crying about your reputation," he said. "You were worried what people would think." "Yes," she said, wiping her eyes. "Well, now is your chance to use those tears," Tyrone said. "Call your friend at the Channel 5 News, the one who owes you a favor." "Why?" "Because we are going to tell the world what really happened," Tyrone said. "We are going to tell them how my father lost his mind after Mom died, how he became paranoid and aggressive, how he fell prey to a predatory lawyer who was trying to steal his home and turn him against his only family." Courtney looked at him. A slow smile spread across her face. "The victim card," she said. "Exactly," Tyrone said. "If we cannot beat him in court, we will beat him in the court of public opinion. We will make him look so crazy that no judge will believe a word he says." 2 hours later, a news van pulled up to the house. A reporter with perfect hair and a microphone stood on the front lawn. I watched it live from my hotel room. I poured a glass of water and sat in the leather armchair. The camera zoomed in on Courtney. She had taken off her jewelry. She was wearing a simple sweater and no makeup. She looked exhausted. She looked like a martyr. "It is just so hard," she said into the microphone, a single tear rolling down her cheek. "We love Sly so much. We have tried everything to help him. But the dementia, it changes people. He thinks we are his enemies. And now this lawyer, this Strickland woman, she has brainwashed him. She has him holed up in a hotel spending money he does not have, while we are just trying to save his home." The reporter turned to the camera, her face serious. "A heartbreaking story here in the suburbs," she said. "A family torn apart by illness and what appears to be elder exploitation by the very legal system meant to protect them. We reached out to Sylvester King for comment but have received no response." I turned off the TV. I did not throw the remote. I did not yell. I just sat there in the silence of the penthouse. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from social media. The clip was already online. The comments were rolling in. "Poor family. Lawyers are snakes. Someone needs to save that old man from himself." But there were other comments too. "Wait until you hear the other side. Why did they throw his clothes on the lawn if they care so much? Something does not add up. The public was divided. They were hungry for drama. They wanted a villain and a victim. Tyrone and Courtney had cast themselves as the heroes. But they forgot one thing. A lie travels halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its shoes. And I was just tying my laces. I picked up my phone and called Strickland. "Did you see it?" I asked. "I did," she said. Her voice was calm cold. "They just defamed you on live television, Mr. King. And they accused me of malpractice." "Are you angry?" I asked. "No," Strickland said. "I am delighted. They just gave us Exhibit B, and Mr. King, I have some news about the loan shark." "What news?" "He saw the broadcast too," Strickland said. "He knows Tyrone is at the house, and he knows Tyrone is lying about having control of the situation." I looked out the window at the city lights. "So the clock is ticking," I said. "Louder than ever," Strickland said. "Get some sleep, Mr. King. Tomorrow we take off the gloves." I hung up. I lay down on the bed. The sheets were soft Egyptian cotton. I thought about the painting under the bed at home. I thought about the receipt in my pocket. Let them talk. Let them cry on camera. Because when the gavel came down, it would not matter how many tears Courtney cried. The truth was coming, and it was going to hit them like a freight train. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in a room that smelled of old money and floor wax. I was not in Chicago anymore. I was in New York City at Rockefeller Center inside the hallowed halls of Christie S. Auction House. I was wearing a suit that cost $4,000. It was Italian silk dark blue, and it fit me like a second skin. Etta always said I looked good in blue. I wished she could see me now. I sat in the front row in a reserved seat with a paddle in my hand just for show because I was not buying. I was selling. Beside me sat Watson, who looked like a different man. He had trimmed his beard and traded his greasy coveralls for a tuxedo. He looked like a professor. He leaned over to me and whispered, "Keep a straight face, Sly. Do not let them see you sweat. These people can smell fear like sharks, smell blood." I looked around the room. It was filled with people I usually only saw on the news. Tech billionaires in hoodies, oil tycoons in cowboy hats, elegant women in diamonds that sparkled under the harsh gallery lights. They were all holding catalogs, glossy heavy books with my wife's name embossed in gold on the cover. The Etta Jones collection. It looked official. It looked important. The lights dimmed and a spotlight hit the podium. The auctioneer stepped up. He was a British man with a voice like melted butter. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "welcome to the event of the season. Tonight we have the privilege of presenting a collection that was lost to time. A collection curated with an eye for brilliance by a woman who saw value where the world saw silence. The Etta Jones collection of African American art and historical artifacts." A murmur went through the crowd. I felt a lump in my throat. They were talking about Etta. My Etta. The woman who hummed while she did the dishes. The auctioneer gestured to the stage. A curtain pulled back. The first item was brought out by two handlers wearing white gloves. "Lot number 1, he announced. A mid-century Papa Bear chair by Hans Wegner. Original teak and wool upholstery. Provenance. The Etta Jones estate." I stared at the chair. It was the same chair. The exact same chair Courtney had kicked in the storage unit. The chair she called ugly. The chair she said was full of mites. It sat on a velvet dais under a spotlight looking like a throne. "Bidding starts at $10,000, the auctioneer said. A paddle shot up in the back. 12,000, 15,000, 20,000. The numbers flew by so fast I could barely keep track. My heart was pounding against my ribs. Courtney had kicked this chair. She had treated it like garbage. 40,000, 50,000. The bidding war was between a man in the front row and someone on the telephone. 100,000. I gripped the armrest of my seat. It was just a chair. How could a chair be worth this much? But Watson had been right. It was not just furniture. It was history. It was condition. It was provenance. 200,000 going once. 225. $250,000 to the bidder on the phone. Going once. Going twice. Sold. The gavel came down with a sharp crack that sounded like justice. $250,000. For a chair. I looked at Watson. He was grinning so hard I thought his face would split. "That is just the appetizer, Sly," he whispered. "Wait for the main course." I sat back in my chair feeling dizzy. That chair alone was worth more than my entire house. That chair alone could have paid off Tyrone's debt. And he had sold it for pennies. The auction continued. It was a blur of numbers and applause. The Augusta Savage sculpture sold for $400,000. The signed books went for $50,000 each. A rare vinyl test pressing of a blues legend went for $75,000. Every time the gavel banged, I thought of Tyrone. I thought of him standing in the rain signing that receipt. I thought of him sneering at the boxes. He had held a winning lottery ticket and he had used it to wipe his muddy shoes. Then the room went quiet. The auctioneer took a sip of water. He adjusted his tie. And now he said, his voice dropping an octave. "The crown jewel of the collection. Lot number 42, Harlem Street scene by Jacob Lawrence. Oil on canvas, dated 1943. The handlers brought out the painting. It was in a new gold frame, now cleaned and restored. The colors popped, the blue of the night sky, the red of the dresses, the energy of the jazz musicians. It was vibrant. It was alive. A hush fell over the room. I saw people leaning forward in their seats. I saw the billionaires putting on their glasses. "This painting has been lost to the art world for decades," the auctioneer said. "It is a masterpiece of the Harlem Renaissance, a testament to the joy and struggle of a people. Bidding starts at $1 million. My breath hitched. 1 million. A paddle went up immediately. 1.2. 1.5. 2 million. It was not a bidding war. It was a frenzy. Hands were flying up all over the room. The price climbed higher and higher, defying gravity. 2.5 million, 2.8, $3 million. The room was electric. I felt like I was floating. "Etta, my sweet Etta, you did this. You saw this. You saved this. $3 million to the gentleman in the back. Going once. Going twice. Sold for $3 million. The room erupted in applause. I closed my eyes and let the sound wash over me. It sounded like rain. It sounded like redemption. The auction went on for another hour. The Basquiat drawing on cardboard, the one Tyrone would have thrown in the trash without a second thought, sold for $4.2 million. When the final gavel fell, the auctioneer wiped his brow. "Thank you, ladies and gentlemen," he said. "This concludes the sale of the Etta Jones collection. a historic night. We went to a private room in the back to sign the papers. The director of the auction house, a woman named Victoria, poured us champagne. "Mr. King," she said, handing me a glass. This was unprecedented. The final total for the collection, after fees and taxes, is $18.5 million. $18.5 million. I looked at the check she handed me. It was a piece of paper, but it weighed a ton. It was freedom. It was power. It was a legacy. I signed the transfer documents. My hand was steady. Watson clinked his glass against mine. "To Etta," he said. "To Etta," I replied. I walked out of Christie S. into the New York night. The air was cold, but I felt warm. I had $18 million in my pocket. But more importantly, I had the truth. And the truth was about to go viral. Back in Chicago, the rain was falling again. It tapped against the window of my old house, the one with the white painted brick and the empty rooms. Inside, Tyrone and Courtney were sitting on the floor of the living room. They had no furniture because they had sold it all to pay the interest on the loan. They had no electricity because they had missed the bill. They were eating instant noodles cooked on a camping stove illuminated by the blue light of a battery-powered portable TV. They looked like ghosts. Tyrone's eyes were sunken and dark. He had not shaved in days. He jumped at every sound, terrified that the loan shark was coming through the door. Courtney looked even worse. Her hair was matted. Her designer clothes were stained. She was picking at her nails nervously. "We need money, Tyrone," she whispered. "The guy said Friday. It is Thursday night. What are we going to do?" "I do not know," Tyrone snapped. "I applied for another credit card, but I got rejected. Dad locked everything down." The lawyer froze the accounts. "Maybe we can sell the car," Courtney said. "It is leased," Tyrone said. "We do not own it." "We do not own anything, Courtney. We are squatting in a house we cannot sell on land we do not own." He slurped his noodles, staring blankly at the small TV screen. The local news was ending and the national broadcast was starting. And finally tonight the anchor said a story that has the art world buzzing. A mysterious collection of rare African-American art discovered in a storage unit in Chicago has just sold at Christie S. auction house in New York for a record-breaking sum. Tyrone stopped chewing. He looked at the TV. The screen showed footage from the auction. It showed the room full of rich people. It showed the auctioneer pounding the gavel. The collection, dubbed the Etta Jones Collection, was amassed by a retired postal worker's wife who quietly bought masterpieces for decades, the reporter said, voice-over playing. "Etta Jones," Courtney whispered. "That is your mother's name." Tyrone crawled closer to the TV. His heart started to pound. The screen flashed images of the items sold. First, the Hans Wegner chair, the teak wood glowing under the lights. "Sold for $250,000, the reporter said. Courtney gasped. She dropped her bowl of noodles. "That chair. That is the ugly chair. The one I kicked." Tyrone could not breathe. He stared at the screen. Next, the painting, the jazz scene, the bright colors, and the star of the show, this Jacob Lawrence painting discovered, wrapped in old butcher paper, sold for $3 million. Tyrone recognized it. He had seen the corner of it peeking out from the sheet. He had stood 2 feet away from it. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." Then the reporter showed a photo of the seller. It was me. I was standing next to the director of Christie S., holding a giant ceremonial check. I was wearing my blue suit. I was smiling. Sylvester King. The husband of the late collector says he plans to use the $18.5 million windfall to start a foundation for young artists, the reporter said. $18.5 million. The number flashed on the screen in big gold letters. Tyrone felt like he had been shot. The room spun. The walls seemed to close in on him. 18 million. He looked at Courtney. Her face was a mask of pure horror. Her eyes were fixed on the screen, her mouth open in a silent scream. "We sold that," she wheezed. "We sold that unit. For $500. Tyrone finished, his voice hollow. He remembered the receipt. He remembered the feeling of the pen in his hand. "I relinquish all rights." He had signed away $18 million. He had signed away his life. He looked at his hands. They were shaking uncontrollably. He started to laugh. It was a manic, broken sound. $500, he giggled. "We got $500. Courtney stood up. She swayed on her feet. The reality of what they had done hit her like a physical blow. The greed, the cruelty, the arrogance. It all came crashing down. She looked at Tyrone. She looked at the empty house. She looked at the TV where I was smiling like a king. "It is your fault," she screamed, pointing a shaking finger at Tyrone. "You made me sign. You said it was trash." Tyrone looked up at her. His eyes were dead. "You kicked the chair," he whispered. "You kicked $250,000. Courtney let out a sound that was not human. It was a high-pitched wail of despair. Her eyes rolled back in her head. Her knees buckled. She collapsed onto the floor in a dead faint landing right in the spilled noodles. Tyrone did not move to help her. He just sat there staring at the TV, staring at my face, staring at the fortune he had thrown away. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the $500 Watson had given him. It was all that was left. He had spent the rest on pizza and beer. He looked at the crumpled bills, $500. He crumpled them up and threw them at the TV. They bounced off the screen and landed on the floor next to his unconscious wife. It was over. The game was over. And he had lost everything. But the worst was yet to come. Because while Tyrone was staring at the ruin of his life, I was already making my next move. I was not done with them yet. I picked up my phone in the hotel room. I called Strickland. "They saw it," I said. "Good," Strickland replied. "Now comes the final blow. Are you ready for the meeting tomorrow, Mr. King?" "I am ready," I said. Tomorrow Tyrone and Courtney would come crawling. They would come begging for a piece of the pie. They would try to claim the money was theirs, and I would be waiting for them, with a receipt signed in their own handwriting and a video of Courtney calling the treasure trash. I turned off the lights in the penthouse. I slept like a baby. The next morning, the sun rose over Chicago bright and clear. It was a beautiful day for a reckoning. The morning sun glinted off the steel and glass of the Strickland Law offices on the 42nd floor. I sat in a leather chair that cost more than my first car, holding a cup of black coffee and watching the door. I was not nervous. I was not afraid. I felt the calm that comes to a soldier when the battle is finally joined. Ms. Strickland sat behind her massive mahogany desk. She looked like a general in a tailored suit. She checked her watch. "They are late," she said. I did not look at my watch. I knew they were coming. Desperation does not keep a schedule, but it always shows up. The elevator doors pinged in the hallway. I heard shouting before I saw them. The receptionist was trying to stop them, but they barreled past her. The heavy double doors to the office burst open. Tyrone and Courtney stumbled into the room. They looked like refugees from a disaster. Tyrone was wearing the same clothes he had been wearing for 3 days. His shirt was stained with sweat and tomato sauce. His eyes were wild, darting around the room like a trapped animal. Courtney looked even worse. Her blonde hair was a tangled mess and she was not wearing makeup. Her face was puffy and red. They stopped when they saw me. I did not stand up. I did not smile. I just took a sip of my coffee. Dad Tyrone gasped. He rushed toward the desk but stopped when Strickland raised a hand. "Sit down, Mr. King," she said, her voice like a whip crack. Tyrone collapsed into a chair. Courtney hovered behind him, wringing her hands. "Dad, we have been trying to call you Tyrone," said his voice cracking. "We saw the news. $18 million, Dad. Oh my God." He started to cry. It was a wet, ugly sound. "We did not know, Dad." He sobbed. "We thought it was just junk. We were trying to help you clean it out. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake." Courtney chimed in, her voice trembling. "We were stressed, Sly. The wedding, the house, the baby. We were not thinking clearly. We love you. We would never hurt you. I watched them perform. It was a bad performance. I could smell the fear on them. It smelled like sour milk. We are a family," Tyrone pleaded. "Mom left that for all of us. She wanted us to be taken care of. You cannot keep it all, Dad. It is not right. I am her son. I am her flesh and blood." He wiped his nose on his sleeve. "I know I messed up, Dad. I know I was pushy about the house, but I was desperate. I have debts, bad debts. If I do not pay them, they are going to kill me. You have to help me. Half of that money is mine by rights. Mom would want me to have it." Strickland leaned forward. Her eyes were cold behind her glasses. "By rights?" she asked. "On what grounds, Mr. King?" "Inheritance." Tyrone snapped his sadness, turning instantly to anger. "That was my mother's property. He found it, but it belonged to the estate. I am the heir. He cannot just sell family heirlooms and keep the cash. I want my share. I want $9 million. $9 million. He said it like he was ordering a pizza. He thought he could walk in here, insult me, threaten me, and then demand a fortune because he shared my DNA. Courtney stepped forward, gaining confidence. "And emotional distress," she said. You tricked us, Sly. You let us believe it was trash. You manipulated us into selling it. That is fraud. We could sue you for everything. We just want what is fair. Give Tyrone his share, and we will drop the lawsuit about the house. We will walk away." I put my coffee cup down on the saucer. The clink was the only sound in the room. I stood up slowly, buttoning my jacket. I walked over to the wall where a large flat-screen TV was mounted. I picked up the remote. I did not say a word. I just pointed the remote and pressed play. The screen flickered to life. It was a vertical video taken from a cell phone. The quality was sharp. Courtney's face filled the screen. She was standing in front of Unit 4B. She looked disgusted. "Hey, guys." "Video," Courtney said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "We are here cleaning out my father-in-law's storage unit. Look at this hoarding situation. It is heartbreaking." In the office, the real Courtney gasped. She put a hand over her mouth. The video continued. I watched myself on the screen begging for the chair. Not the chair I cried in the video. Etta loved this chair. Then the video showed Courtney kicking the leg of the Hans Wegner Papa Bear chair. "Let go of it, you crazy old man," she screamed on the screen. "It is ugly. It is full of mites. I would not put this in my house if you paid me." I paused the video. The image of Courtney S. face twisted in a sneer was frozen on the screen. I turned to look at them. Courtney was pale as a sheet. Tyrone was staring at the floor. "Mites," I said softly. "Ugly." Courtney started to stammer. I was upset. I did not mean it. I pressed play again. The video cut to the moment Watson arrived. "I will pay you $500, Watson said on the screen. 500, Tyrone asked in the video. Then the camera moved to the clipboard. It zoomed in on the document. "I, Tyrone King, sell all contents of Unit 4B to Watson, hauling for the sum of $500. I relinquish all rights and ownership, sold as is, no returns." I paused the video again on the close-up of the signature. Tyrone King. I put the remote down. I walked back to the desk. Strickland opened a folder. She pulled out a piece of paper. It was the original receipt. The ink was still black and sharp. She slid it across the polished wood of the desk toward Tyrone. "Is this your signature, Mr. King?" she asked. Tyrone looked at it. He looked at the loop of the T. He looked at the jagged line of the K. "Yes," he whispered. "And this one?" Strickland asked, pointing to the witness line. Courtney nodded. "Yes." "Then the matter is settled," Strickland said. "You did not inherit $18 million, Mr. King. You inherited the contents of Unit 4B, and then you sold those contents to Mr. Watson for $500. You signed a binding contract relinquishing all rights. You stated clearly that the items were sold as is. But we did not know what it was," Tyrone shouted, standing up. "That is fraud." He knew. He tricked us. "Ignorance of value is not fraud," Strickland said calmly. "You had every opportunity to inspect the items. Your father begged you to keep them. You refused. You called it trash. You demanded the money. You made a deal, Mr. King. And in the eyes of the law, a deal is a deal." "But it is $18 million, Courtney shrieked. "You cannot keep that on a technicality." "It is not a technicality," I said, my voice rising for the first time. "It is a lesson." I looked at Tyrone. "You wanted quick cash," I said. "You wanted the easy way out. You did not want to do the work. You did not want to look inside the boxes. You just wanted to get paid and get rid of me. Well, you got paid, son. You got $500. Tyrone looked at me. His eyes were red and raw. "Dad, please," he said. "The loan shark. He is going to kill me. I need the money. Just a little bit. Just 200,000. That is nothing to you now. It is everything to me," I said. "Because if I give you that money, I am paying for my own abuse. I am paying you for throwing my clothes on the lawn. I am paying you for calling me crazy. I am paying you for spitting on your mother's memory." I leaned across the desk. "I am not your bank, Tyrone. I am your father. And fathers teach their sons consequences." Tyrone started to shake. A low sound built in his throat like a growl. He turned his head slowly and looked at Courtney. She was standing there with her hand over her mouth, staring at the receipt. "You," he whispered. Courtney took a step back. "Tyrone, you," he shouted. "You said it was trash. You kicked the chair. You made me sign." "Tyrone, stop," Courtney cried, backing toward the door. "You cost me $18 million. Tyrone screamed. His face turned purple. The veins in his neck bulged. He looked insane. He lunged at her. He grabbed her by the throat and slammed her against the wall. A picture frame fell and shattered. "You stupid witch!" he roared, squeezing her neck. "You ruined my life! You killed us!" Courtney clawed at his hands, gasping for air. Her eyes were bulging. "Help!" she choked out. I did not move. I watched. I watched the monster I had raised turn on the monster he had married. Strickland pressed a button under her desk. The door flew open. 3 uniformed security guards burst in. They were big men. They did not hesitate. 2 of them grabbed Tyrone. They pulled him off Courtney and threw him to the floor. He fought them, kicking and screaming like a toddler. "Let me go," he yelled. "I am going to kill her. She owes me $18 million. The guards pinned him down. One of them put a knee in his back and cuffed his hands behind him. Courtney slid down the wall, coughing and gasping. She rubbed her throat. There were red marks where his fingers had been. "Get them out of here," Strickland said. The guards hauled Tyrone to his feet. He looked at me. His eyes were wild. "Dad, help me," he screamed. "Do not let them take me. Dad, please." I looked at him. I looked at the son I had held in my arms when he was a baby. I looked at the man who had sold his mother's legacy for pocket change. I did not see my son anymore. I saw a stranger. "Take him," I said. The guards dragged him out. His screams echoed down the hallway until the elevator doors closed. Courtney sat on the floor, weeping. She looked up at me. Her mascara was running down her face in black streaks. "Sly," she whispered, "I am sorry. I will sign whatever you want. Just help me. The loan shark thinks I am part of it. He will come for me too." I walked over to her. I looked down. "You should have thought about that before you threw my shoes in the mud." "Courtney," I said. "Get out," Strickland said, "before I have you arrested for trespassing." Courtney scrambled to her feet. She grabbed her purse and ran out of the office, leaving the door swinging behind her. The room was quiet again. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioner and the beating of my own heart. Strickland stood up and smoothed her skirt. "Well," she said. "That went well." I walked to the window and looked out at the city. I felt tired in my soul, but I also felt clean. The cancer had been cut out. "Is it over?" Mr. King Strickland asked. I shook my head. "No," I said. "It is not over." I turned back to her. "They still think they have the house," I said. "They think they have a roof over their heads. They think they can sell it to pay the shark." Strickland smiled. A shark smile. "They do," she said. "Get the eviction papers ready, Ms. Strickland," I said, "and call the police. I want to report a forgery." "We are taking the house back?" I asked. "No," I said. "We are taking the land, and we are going to bury them in it." The courtroom smelled of floor polish and desperation. I sat at the plaintiff table next to Ms. Strickland, smoothing the wrinkles in my suit pants. Across the aisle, Tyrone and Courtney sat huddled together. They looked like 2 drowning rats clinging to a piece of driftwood. Tyrone was out on bail for the assault charge at the office. He had used the last of his credit to pay a bondsman. He was betting everything on this hearing. If he could prove the house was his, he could sell it, pay off the loan shark, and maybe stay out of prison. It was a Hail Mary pass thrown by a man with a broken arm. The judge was a woman named Honorable Judge Vance. She had eyes that could spot a lie from a mile away. She looked over her glasses at the defense table. "Mr. King," she said, addressing Tyrone, "you have filed a motion claiming ownership of the property at 422 Maple Drive based on a last will and testament allegedly signed by your late mother. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," Tyrone said, standing up. His suit was rumpled and he looked like he hadn't slept in a week. "My mother left that house to me. It was her wish. My father is trying to steal my inheritance because he is angry about a misunderstanding with some old furniture." He was still spinning the narrative. He was still trying to gaslight the world. Strickland stood up. She did not look at Tyrone. She looked at the judge. "Your Honor, we have already established that the defendant has a history of fraud regarding the estate. But we are here today to address this specific document. We would like to call our expert witness, Dr. Eris Thorne." A man in a tweed jacket walked to the stand. He carried a briefcase and an air of absolute authority. He was a forensic document examiner, the best in the state. He set up a projector. A large image appeared on the wall behind the judge. It was a split screen. On the left was Etta S.'s signature from her driver's license, her voter registration, and checks she had written for 30 years. It was small, tight, and precise. On the right was the signature on the will Tyrone had produced. It was large, looping, and shaky. Dr. Thorne used a laser pointer, as you can see. Your Honor, the pressure points are completely different. He explained, his voice dry and clinical. The signature on the left shows the natural fluidity of a writer comfortable with her name. The signature on the right shows what we call pen lifts and hesitation marks. The person writing this stopped 3 times mid-letter. That is the sign of someone copying a signature, not writing their own. He clicked a button. The image zoomed in on the letter K in King. Furthermore, the ink analysis shows that this document was signed with a ballpoint pen manufactured less than 6 months ago, Dr. Thorne said. However, the document is dated 3 years ago. Unless Mrs. Etta King had a time machine, it is physically impossible for her to have signed this document on the date alleged. The courtroom was silent. Tyrone sank lower in his chair. Courtney put her face in her hands. It is a forgery, Dr. Thorne concluded. And a clumsy one at that. Judge Vance looked at Tyrone. Her face was hard. Mr. King, do you have an explanation for this? She asked. Tyrone stood up. He was sweating. I do not know, he stammered. Maybe she signed it later. Maybe she used a new pen. It is her signature. I saw her sign it. You are under oath, Mr. King, the judge warned. I saw her, Tyrone shouted, losing control. She wanted me to have the house. She knew Dad would just let it rot. She wanted me to have a future. Strickland stood up. Your Honor, the plaintiff moves to dismiss the claim of ownership based on proven fraud, but we also have a second matter to address regarding the property. The judge looked interested. Go on, Ms. Strickland. Even if this will were real, Strickland said, walking to the center of the room, it would be irrelevant. Irrelevant, Tyrone yelled. It is the deed to the house. Strickland turned to him. She smiled a smile that did not reach her eyes. It was a smile that said, checkmate. It is the deed to the structure, Mr. King, she said. But your mother did not own the land the house sits on. Not personally. She walked back to her table and picked up a thick, leather-bound binder. She handed it to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. 30 years ago, shortly after you were born, Etta King established the Etta King Charitable Trust, Strickland said. She transferred the title of the land at 422 Maple Drive into that trust. She did this to protect the family asset from bankruptcy lawsuits or unforeseen creditors. I looked at Strickland. I knew this was coming, but hearing it out loud made my chest swell. Etta. She was always 10 steps ahead. She knew Tyrone's nature before he could even walk. Strickland continued. The trust has a very specific occupancy clause. It states that her husband Sylvester King and her son Tyrone King are granted lifetime rights to reside on the property. Tyrone jumped up. See, he screamed. Lifetime rights. I can live there. You cannot kick me out. Sit down, Mr. King, the judge barked. Strickland waited for the silence to return. However, she said, raising her voice slightly, there is a condition, a revocation clause. She pointed to page 12 of the document the judge was reading. The clause states that the residency rights of any beneficiary shall be immediately and permanently revoked if said beneficiary engages in any of the following behaviors. 1. Elder abuse or neglect of the other beneficiary. 2. Conviction of a felony involving dishonesty or fraud. Or 3. Incurring gambling debts in excess of $5,000 that place the property at risk of lien or seizure. The color drained from Tyrone S.'s face. It drained from Courtney S.'s face, too. They looked like statues carved from ice. They had hit the trifecta. They had abused me. They had committed fraud. And Tyrone S.'s gambling debts were astronomical. In the event of any of these violations, Strickland read the ownership and full control of the land revert solely to the remaining beneficiary in good standing. In this case, Mr. Sylvester King. Mr. King then has the right to evict the offending party and dispose of the property as he sees fit, including demolishing the structure to protect the land. Tyrone slumped back into his chair. He looked small. He looked like a child who had broken a window and knew his punishment was coming. So you see, Your Honor, Strickland concluded, closing her file. Tyrone King does not own the house, he does not own the land, and by his own actions he has forfeited his right to even step foot on the grass. He is legally a trespasser in his own childhood home. Judge Vance closed the binder. She took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. She looked at Tyrone with a mixture of pity and disgust. Mr. King, she said, in my 20 years on the bench I have seen greed. I have seen families tear each other apart for money, but I have never seen a son try so hard to destroy the parents who gave him everything. She picked up her gavel. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff, she ruled. The will presented by the defense is declared null and void and is impounded as evidence of forgery. The court upholds the terms of the Etta King Trust. Mr. Tyrone King and Mrs. Courtney King are hereby ordered to vacate the property at 422 Maple Drive immediately. You have 0 hours. You are not to return. Tyrone put his head on the table. He started to sob. It was a quiet, hopeless sound, but the judge was not finished. Furthermore, she said, looking at the bailiff, based on the testimony of Dr. Thorne regarding the forged signature and the previous evidence of assault presented at the bail hearing, this court is revoking the defendant S. bail. Tyrone head snapped up. What? Mr. King, you have committed perjury and fraud in my courtroom today, the judge said, and you are a flight risk given your significant debts to criminal elements. Bailiff, take him into custody. 2 officers moved toward the defense table. They pulled Tyrone out of his chair. No. Tyrone screamed, kicking his legs. You cannot do this. I have rights. Mom wanted me to have the house. Dad, tell them. He looked at me. His eyes were wide and wet. Dad, please, he begged. Do not let them take me. I am scared. Those guys in prison, they will kill me. I stood up. I looked at my son. I saw the fear. I saw the regret. But I did not see innocence. I saw a man who had made his bed and now had to sleep in it. I did not say a word. I just turned my back on him. They handcuffed him. The metal clicked shut. It was the sound of a door closing forever. Courtney stood up, trying to inch away, trying to distance herself from him. And Mrs. King, the judge, said. Courtney froze. You are also named in the fraud lawsuit, the judge said. And while you are not being arrested today, I suggest you do not leave the jurisdiction. The district attorney will be reviewing the transcripts of this hearing for potential charges of conspiracy. Courtney looked at Tyrone being dragged away. Then she looked at me. Her eyes were full of hate. I hope you rot in that big house, she hissed. I hope you die alone. I looked at her calmly. I won't be alone, Courtney, I said. I have my memories, and I have my dignity. You have nothing. The officers dragged Tyrone out the side door. His screams echoed in the hallway. Courtney grabbed her purse and ran out the back door like the building was on fire. The courtroom cleared out. Strickland started packing up her briefcase. We did it, Mr. King, she said. The house is yours, the land is yours, and they can never hurt you again. I nodded. I felt tired. It was a heavy weight to carry the destruction of your own family. Thank you, Ms. Strickland, I said. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun. The air smelled of exhaust and hot pavement. I hailed a taxi, whereto the driver asked. Take me to 422 Maple Drive, I said. I wanted to see it. I wanted to see my house without them in it. When I arrived, the house looked sad. The white paint was already peeling in spots where they had rushed the job. The yard was overgrown. I walked up the driveway. I used my key to open the front door. It was empty inside. They had sold the furniture. They had sold the rugs. It was just a shell. I walked through the rooms. My footsteps echoed on the bare floors. I went into the kitchen. I remembered Etta cooking Sunday dinner. I went into the living room. I remembered Tyrone opening Christmas presents. It was all gone. I walked out to the backyard. The old oak tree was still there, standing tall and strong. Etta loved that tree. I sat down on the back steps. I took a deep breath. I was alone, but I was free. My phone rang. It was Watson. Sly, he said, I just saw the news. They arrested him. Yeah, I said, it is done. So what now? Watson asked. What are you going to do with $18 million in an empty house? I looked at the oak tree. I looked at the fence line. I am not keeping the house. Watson, I said. What? You fought so hard for it. It is tainted, I said. Too many bad memories. Tyrone poisoned it. So you are going to sell it? No, I said. I am going to give it back to Etta. What do you mean? The trust owns the land, I said. I am going to bulldoze the house. I am going to tear it down brick by brick. And I am going to build a park, a sculpture garden. For the kids in the neighborhood, I am going to fill it with art. Watson was silent for a moment. Then I heard him chuckle. Etta would like that, he said. Yeah, I said. She would. I hung up the phone. I sat there for a long time watching the sun go down. I had lost a son, but I had kept a promise, and in the end, that was all that mattered. The ink on the divorce papers was barely dry when Courtney walked out of the county courthouse. She looked lighter, as if shedding my son's last name had also shed his debts and his crimes. She was wearing a trench coat and sunglasses, trying to look like a victim who had just escaped a nightmare. She thought she was free. She thought she could walk away from the wreckage she helped create and start over with whatever money she had hidden away. But she forgot that when you dance with the devil, you cannot just leave the ballroom when the music stops. I watched from my car, parked across the street. I was not there to taunt her. I was there to witness the final piece of the puzzle fall into place. Courtney walked down the courthouse steps, her heels clicking on the pavement. She reached the sidewalk and turned toward the parking lot, but she never made it to her car. A black SUV pulled up to the curb, blocking her path. Two men got out. They were not police officers. They were not lawyers. They were the kind of men who did not care about court orders or divorce decrees. I saw Courtney freeze. She recognized them. One of the men, a large individual with a scar running down his jaw, stepped in front of her. He did not shout. He spoke quietly, but I knew exactly what he was saying. "Ms. Courtney," he said, "we heard you are single now. Congratulations." Courtney tried to step around him. "Leave me alone," she said, her voice rising in panic. "I am not with Tyrone anymore. His debts are not my problem. Talk to him in jail." The man laughed. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a copy of the loan agreement Tyrone had signed. "We know he is in jail," the man said, "but we also know you signed as the guarantor on the second loan. Right here. See that signature?" Courtney stared at the paper. She shook her head violently. "That is a lie," she screamed. "I never signed that." "You did," the man said, his voice hardening. "You signed it 3 months ago when you needed cash for the wedding planner. You spent our money, honey, and now the payment is due." Courtney looked around for help, but the street was empty. "Please," she begged. "I do not have it." The old man took everything. He took the art. He took the house. "I have nothing." The man looked her up and down. He looked at the diamond earrings she was wearing. He looked at the designer watch on her wrist. He looked at the expensive leather bag on her shoulder. "You do not look like you have nothing," he said. He reached out and grabbed her wrist. He unclasped the watch. "Hey," Courtney shouted, trying to pull away. "That is mine. Interest payment," the man said, pocketing the watch. Then he reached for her ears. Courtney screamed and tried to cover them, but the second man grabbed her arms. They were efficient. They were cold. They took the earrings. They took the necklace. They took the bag. They left her standing on the sidewalk with nothing but her coat and her shoes. "We will be seeing you," the man said. "The principal is still due. You better find a job, Courtney. A well-paying one. Or we will find one for you." They got back in the SUV and drove away. Courtney stood there on the concrete. She looked at her empty wrists. She looked at the empty street. And then she broke. She fell to her knees and wailed. It was a sound of absolute defeat. She was alone. She was broke. And she was hunted. I rolled up my window and drove away. I did not feel joy. I felt a grim satisfaction. She had wanted to live a life of luxury she had not earned. Now she was paying the price. My phone rang as I was driving back to the hotel. The caller ID said Cook County Correctional Facility. I stared at the phone. It rang and rang. Part of me wanted to let it go to voicemail. I wanted to cut the cord completely, but I knew I had to answer. I had to say goodbye properly. I pressed accept. "You have a collect call from an inmate, Tyrone King," the automated voice said. "Press 1 to accept." I pressed 1. Dad, Tyrone's voice came through the line. It sounded small and tinny. He was crying. "Dad, are you there?" he asked. "I am here, Tyrone," I said. "Dad, you have to help me," he sobbed. "It is bad in here, really bad. I am in protective custody, but they can still get to me. The guards hate me. The food is rotten. I cannot stay here, Dad. You have to bail me out." I listened to him cry. I listened to the background noise of the jail, the shouting and the clanging of metal doors. "Please, Dad," he begged. "I learned my lesson. I swear. I will change. I will get a job. I will pay you back every cent. Just put up the bail money. You have $18 million. It is nothing to you. Just get me out and I will disappear. I will go to another state. You will never see me again." I closed my eyes. I remembered teaching him to ride a bike. I remembered his high school graduation. I remembered the pride I felt when he got his first job, even though he quit it 2 weeks later. I wanted to save him. Every instinct in my body as a father wanted to save him. But saving him now would be the worst thing I could do. If I bailed him out, he would run. He would get in more trouble. He would never learn. "Dad, say something," Tyrone pleaded. "Please. I am your son. Mom would not want this." I took a deep breath. "Your mother loved you, Tyrone." I said, my voice steady. "She loved you so much she hid a fortune in a storage unit to keep you from destroying yourself with it. She knew who you were, and she knew what you would do. She wanted me to have it," Tyrone shouted. "She wanted me to be happy. She wanted you to be a man," I said, "and a man takes responsibility for his actions." I let the silence hang there for a moment. "I am not bailing you out, son," I said. "What?" Tyrone screamed. "You cannot leave me in here." "I can," I said. "And I will." "Etta left you a gift, Tyrone. It was not the money. It was not the house." "What gift?" he spat. "The gift of independence," I said. "She left you the chance to stand on your own 2 feet without us holding you up. You have nothing now, Tyrone. No safety net, no inheritance, no parents to bail you out. You are finally free to be exactly who you are." "Dad, no," he cried. "Dad, please." "Enjoy it, son," I said. I hung up the phone. I blocked the number. I pulled over to the side of the road. I put my head on the steering wheel and wept. I cried for the son I had lost. I cried for the little boy who used to look at me like I was Superman. But Superman cannot save someone who wants to jump off a cliff. 2 days later, I stood on the sidewalk in front of 422 Maple Drive. It was a sunny morning. The birds were singing in the old oak tree. The house looked tired. The white paint was already peeling in spots, revealing the red brick underneath like a wound. The windows were dark. Next to me stood a man in a hard hat. He was holding a clipboard. "Are you sure about this, Mr. King?" he asked. "It is a solid structure. Good bones. We could renovate it. Flip it." I looked at the house. I saw the window where Courtney threw my clothes. I saw the kitchen where Tyrone found the diary. I saw the living room where they plotted to put me in a nursing home. There were too many ghosts in there. The walls were soaked in betrayal, I am sure I said. I looked at the heavy yellow bulldozer parked on the lawn. It looked like a prehistoric beast waiting to feed. I had bought the house structure back from the trust using a fraction of the auction money. I owned it free and clear. And as the owner, I had the right to do whatever I wanted with it. "Tear it down," I said. The foreman nodded and signaled the driver. The engine of the bulldozer roared to life. Black smoke puffed into the blue sky. The machine lurched forward. The treads tore up the grass. It approached the front porch. The metal bucket raised up and crashed down onto the roof of the porch. Wood splintered. Glass shattered. The sound was violent and loud. Mrs. Higgins came out of her house next door. She stood on her porch watching. She waved at me. I waved back. She knew. The whole neighborhood knew. The bulldozer drove through the living room wall. The house groaned and collapsed inward. Dust billowed up, covering the street in a white cloud. I watched as 40 years of my life were reduced to a pile of rubble. I saw my bedroom wall fall. I saw the kitchen disappear. I did not feel sad. I felt relief. I was erasing the stain. It took 4 hours to level the house. When it was done, there was nothing left but a flat patch of dirt and the old oak tree standing guard in the back. The foreman walked over to me, wiping dust from his face. "All done, Mr. King," he said. "We will haul the debris away tomorrow. What are you going to do with the lot?" "Sell it to a developer." I looked at the empty space. It looked big. It looked full of potential. "No," I said. "I am not selling." I walked over to the oak tree and touched the rough bark. Etta loved this tree. She used to sit under it and read. "I am going to build a park," I said, "a small park for the neighborhood kids, with swings and benches, and a garden." I looked at the foreman. "And I am going to put sculptures in it," I said. "Art. I want people to see beauty when they walk past here." The foreman smiled. "That sounds nice. What are you going to call it?" I looked at the empty land. I could see it already. Green grass, flowers, children playing. "The Etta King Memorial Park," I said. I turned and walked away, leaving the ruins behind me. I had a lot of work to do. I had a foundation to start. I had a park to build. My life was not over. It was just beginning. 1 year later, I stood in the middle of a room that smelled of fresh paint and possibility. The building used to be an abandoned warehouse on the edge of the north side, not far from where Etta had kept her secret. Now the brick walls were scrubbed clean, and the high windows let in streams of golden afternoon light. I was wearing a new suit. It was gray wool tailored to fit my shoulders perfectly, but I was not wearing it to impress bankers or lawyers. I was wearing it for the 50 children who were currently running around the main hall with paintbrushes in their hands and laughter in their chests. I looked up at the bronze plaque mounted by the entrance, the Etta Jones Center for the Arts, free admission, open to everyone. It was not a museum where art went to die in quiet rooms. It was a workshop. It was a sanctuary. I had used $5 million of the auction money to buy the building and renovate it. I put another $10 million into an endowment to pay for teachers' supplies and scholarships. I wanted to make sure that every kid in Chicago who had a vision like Basquiat or a soul like Jacob Lawrence had a place to create without worrying about the cost of canvas. I walked through the gallery space. On the far wall hung a large portrait of Etta. It was painted by a young artist from the neighborhood based on a photo I found in her diary. She was smiling that secret smile of hers, the one she used to give me when she knew something I did not. I stood in front of her painting for a long time. The noise of the children faded into the background. "You knew, Etta," I whispered to the canvas. "You knew everything." I finally understood the note she left in the jewelry box. "Please forgive me." She was not asking forgiveness for hiding the money. She was asking forgiveness for the burden she knew it would bring. She knew that wealth is like a magnifying glass. It does not change who you are, it just enlarges it. If you are generous, it makes you a philanthropist. If you are greedy, it makes you a monster. She knew Tyrone was broken. She saw the cracks in his character that I refused to see because I was his father. She hid the art not to keep it from me, but to keep it from him until I was strong enough to handle the war that would follow. Her silence was not a betrayal. It was a shield. She protected me from the grave. I felt a presence beside me. I turned to see a woman standing there. She was about my age, with silver hair pulled back in a bun and eyes that crinkled at the corners. She was wearing a simple dress and a colorful scarf that looked like it was painted by hand. "It is a beautiful tribute," she said, her voice soft and melodic. "Thank you," I said. "She deserved it." She was the one with the eye. I am just the one with the checkbook." The woman smiled. She looked at the children working at the easels. "I taught art in the public schools for 35 years, she said. "I watched them cut our budget every year. I watched them take away the clay and the paint until all we had were pencils and paper. To see this, to see them having everything they need, it is a miracle." "It is not a miracle," I said. "It is justice. It is taking something that was hidden in the dark and bringing it into the light." "I am Maya," she said, extending her hand. "I am Sly," I said, taking it. Her hand was warm and strong. "I know who you are," Maya said. "Everyone knows the story of Sylvester King, the man who found a fortune and gave it back to the community. You are a local hero, Sly." I shook my head. "I am not a hero. I am just a man who cleaned out his closet." She laughed. It was a genuine sound, bright and clear. "Well, Mr. King," she said, "I am retired, but if you ever need a volunteer to teach a watercolor class on Tuesdays, I find myself with a lot of free time." I looked at her. I saw kindness in her face. I saw someone who loved art as much as Etta did. I saw a future that did not involve courtrooms or lawyers or betrayal. "I think we have an opening," I said, "but I have to warn you. The pay is terrible, but the coffee is free." "I love free coffee," she said. We walked together through the gallery. We talked about art. We talked about jazz. We talked about the city. For the first time in a year, I was not talking about fraud or forgery. I was just talking to another human being. We walked out of the center and into the courtyard I had built. It was filled with sculptures and benches. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the grass. I felt a sense of peace settle over me. It was a quiet feeling, like the end of a long, hard day of work. I had lost my family. The house on Maple Drive was gone, replaced by a park where kids played tag. Tyrone was in a cell in Stateville Correctional Center, learning that the world does not owe him a living. Courtney was out there somewhere, probably looking for her next victim. I was alone in the legal sense. I had no wife, I had no son. But as I walked next to Maya, listening to her describe her favorite painting, I realized I was not lonely. I had stripped away the lies. I had burned down the false structures of my life, and what was left was solid. It was real. I stopped at the gate and looked back at the center. The lights were coming on inside. I could see the silhouettes of the children painting their dreams on fresh canvas. I looked into the lens of the camera that had been following my story. Money does not change people. I said, my voice steady and sure. It just reveals them. It peels back the skin and shows you the bone. If you are rotten, the money will make you rot faster. If you are strong, the money will make you unbreakable. I took a deep breath. I lost a son, I said. And that is a pain that will never go away. I wake up some nights reaching for the phone, wanting to call him, wanting to hear him say he is sorry, but he is not sorry. He is just caught. And there is a difference. I adjusted my jacket, but in losing him, I found myself, I said. I found the man Etta fell in love with 40 years ago, the man who works hard, the man who values truth, the man who can stand on his own 2 feet without a crutch. I looked at Maya, who was waiting for me by the curb. She smiled. I smiled back. My name is Sylvester King, I said. I am 69 years old, and my life is just getting started. Would you trust your closest relative with an $18 million treasure knowing it might destroy them? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and subscribe for more. Until next time, take care of yourselves and watch your back. Looking back, I realize Etta left me more than a fortune. She left me a mirror. We often blame money for destroying families, but I believe it simply unmasks them. It strips away the pretense, revealing who stands by you in the rain and who only arrives for the harvest. I lost a son who valued my wallet over my heart, but I gained the freedom to live authentically. True wealth isn't measured by an auction hammer. It's the peace of mind to sleep soundly knowing you never compromised your dignity. Sometimes you have to lose the people you thought you needed to find the person you were always meant to be. If you enjoyed this story of justice and redemption, please like this video and subscribe to my channel so we can continue sharing the truth together.